Good evening. Today is Thursday, April 16th, 2026. I'd like to call this meeting of the Auburn City Council to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson just running a few minutes late. Councilor Diego.
Here.
Councilor Cuddy.
Here.
Councilor Clarko.
Here.
Mayor Genatino.
Here, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Thank you. Please be seated. Public announcements? All right, move on to the public to be heard.
Oh, actually, I forgot. I do have one thing. This weekend is our first of 2 spring cleanup days at the city transfer station. The transfer station will be open on Saturday, April 18th from 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. This is the day that residents can bring things to the transfer station for free. There is a charge for freon containing appliances. There is a complete list of rules and regulations on the city's website, and the rules will be strictly enforced, and we encourage everybody that's heading down there to make sure they read through the rules and regulations before they head down there. That's this Saturday for the first of 2 spring cleanup days, April 18th, 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Thanks.
Very good. Move on to the public to be heard.
At this point in time, we'll open the public to be heard portion of the council meeting. Residents are asked to state their name and address for the record if you are a City of Auburn resident. If you are not a City of Auburn resident, please state your name, address, and the town in which you reside. If that town is not in Cuyahoga County, please state the town and county in which you reside. People are asked to keep remarks to 3 minutes or less, and please observe commonly accepted rules of courtesy and decorum.
All right, very good. Is there anybody wishing to be heard this evening? Mr. Bush.
Dale Bush, 116 Stanley Woods. I'm here tonight to talk on behalf of the crossing guards. I know that you all have a very difficult decision ahead of you in the next month or so. And I know last week it was brought up and there was a question asked about whether it was a mandate from the state, whether you needed them or not, and the answer was no. So I'd like to talk on their behalf because I'm sure that's an easy thing for you to eliminate from the budget. It does come under the police department. I moved into the city in 2005 after owning a house out in the northern part of the county for 30 years, and I started attending city council meetings at that time. In 2007, I retired after 36 years of full-time employment, went 4 months, and decided I needed something to do. So I got a job as a crossing guard. Chief Janata hired me. To be a crossing guard, when you first get hired, you have to sub. They call you when they need you and tell you where to go. So I did that about a year and a half. I finally got a steady spot that was mine. And in 2013, the budget eliminated 4 crossing guards from 17 down to 13. And it's at that point now, it never was brought back. So I had to sub again, and I finally got a spot after somebody retired, left. And my spot was at the corner of North Seward and Franklin Street, very busy intersection. 4-way stop, you'd think there'd be no problems there. Well, I'm telling you, there is. I had a very good rapport with most of the students that came through there. I'd say good morning to each and every one of them, because I had no idea what their home life was like before they crossed and I saw them. You're out there all weather, whether it's 90 degrees, whether it's 0 degrees, snowing, raining, sleeting, wind blowing 40 miles an hour. You're out there, but so are those kids that you're going to take care of. Now, in the past few years, we've had 2 crossing guards that have been hit by vehicles. I myself came close several times. One was close enough to me that they hit my stop sign as I was bringing it down to turn to walk back to the curb. I had several vehicles, including tractor trailers, failed to stop at that four-way stop. Fortunately, I never had a kid out in the road when that happened. So I'm kind of here to voice concern for that. I no longer do it. I stopped at the end of 2023. But I know what the job entails, so I just wanted to give you the overview of what it entailed so that you can keep this in your mind when you're forming your decisions on what you're going to have to cut. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Dwyer?
My name is Sue Dwyer, and I live at 44 Drummond Street in Auburn. I don't claim to know everything, but I do know this. The city, county, and the school districts are all in turmoil, regardless of how this happened, and I don't think pointing at people and blaming them will help the people in our community. We are all in the same boat, so we should collectively agree that unless we make significant changes, none of us are going to benefit. Just as city, county, and school officials are worried, there are thousands of taxpayers who are scared that they will not be able to pay their tax bills now, let alone pay high taxes. Many of them can't even pay their NYSEG bills now, let alone their water and sewer bills if they get raised. I have the knowledge of what the city and county budget processes are, having worked for both. And we had to make choices and accept changes. I also know what it's like to have loved ones laid off from their jobs. We are all in this together. As a taxpayer, I realize we might have to accept less services, etc. However, we need to put our house in order, just like we have learned at home to shop differently at the grocery store and use thrift stores for some of our own needs. Change is not easy, but if you don't accept change on all these levels, things will never get turned around. I am thankful that many questions are being asked this year because learning more about the issues and challenges is always helpful. I'd like to also especially call out your newest city councilor, Craig Diego, for the extended amount of time he has spent coming up with solutions after learning about the problems and being a new person here. But I want to thank all of the city council for your service. And I want to thank all of the city workers. I was one at one time too, and I know how heartbreaking this all is. And I just wanted to say, let's work together and hopefully we come out for the best and we get some of these problems solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Mr. Aikman?
Good evening. My name is Walt. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Walt Aikman. I live 17 Liberty Street. And as always, I thank you for your service doing this work you do. Don't forget, you got to get that brain scan because it's got to be a tough job being an elected official these days. There's probably a whole bunch of the city employees I'd miss in this reflection because, you know, I raised my kids to respect police officers, and I have found the staff here to be completely professional and helpful every time I needed their help. I haven't hung around firefighters very often, and I have run into the employees in the water department and some of the other departments, certainly planning. You know, I met a lot of great people. But you have to realize that the way I look at things like what's happening in the city right now, and I agree with Sue Dwyer that we need to treat each other with respect and civility, is that I've been working hard all my life. Okay, I planted trees in Africa for the Peace Corps. I've seen kids barefoot planting trees in soil that you and I would mostly consider rocks. Okay, I taught at this community college for more than 15 years, and many years we had the students help planting trees. And then, of course, all our volunteer work where people have come forward and helped plant trees. And I can count on one hand the number of people who had the kind of hard-working experience that I had. Because most of us grow up in suburbia or nice neighborhoods, and we don't teach our kids, you know, go and become a professional who faces danger every day, like a firefighter or a police officer, or in this case, someone who works for the Department of Public Works. The men and women at the Public Works Department working so hard. And what do we hear? We hear these nameless people on Facebook and social media denigrating this hard work. I'd like to know how many people have actually had experience pushing snow with a loader, you know, or how many people have been out there. These people work extremely hard, day and night, bad weather, good weather. A lot of the work they do is extremely dangerous. And they go home showering at the end of the day like I do because they're working for a living. And I mean physical work, hard labor. And they have to show up to work and do one job, and the next thing you know, they're switched over and doing something else. Everything that happens successfully in the city, the foundation is the Department of Public Works. So I urge you to recognize the men and women of these particular department and all the departments, but especially DPW. These men and women work so hard, they bring their heart and soul, and then when I'm working with them, it's not the people I know on one hand who can work as hard as I can.
10 seconds, Dr. Aikman.
Can I keep up with them? So let's support them if we can.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gaybeck.
Hi, Tom Gayback, 106 North Lewis Street. Here is the president of the professional unit for CSEA, also the local 806 president for Cuyahoga County. First, want to thank my union brothers and sisters for all the support for the last 2 nights. It's been outstanding, and I'm very appreciative and very proud. Thank you very much. I'm here tonight to protest the way this whole mess is being handled. We're all union. We are the union who doesn't know who is getting laid off. There's 5 positions. We've been told there's 5 CSEA positions that are set for termination. I don't know who they are. I know there's good things that are going to impact that if people take the retirement. If there's a couple of things been floated about a health insurance tweak. So it would really help the membership. Everybody breathe a sigh of relief, and then we could focus on the people that are impacted, and we could work with the city, not against them. The way we're going about this now, and as people have come up here and support week after week, we're pitting union against union. Police are more important than fire. They're more important than CSEA. I hate that. We're all family. We're all from Auburn. We're all neighbors, and we're all important. If one of the wheels of the truck fall off, the truck goes off the road. So I hate that we're having to get up here and say, I'm better than them. It's terrible.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Just point of clarification. Who's we? You say we are pitting the unions against each other. Who's we?
The way the process is being handled by the city, it's forcing us to get up here and say what we do. It's forcing the fire department to get up here and say what they do. It's up here for the police department to say what we do. And everybody's trying to make a case that who's most important, and it shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't. So sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Like I said, we're all valuable and we're all neighbors. I personally don't think the cuts are being done in a fair and equitable manner. Is anybody from management being cut? One management person that makes over $100,000 is 2 of my members. So let's think about that, because that's not happening. I don't even know if that's been mentioned yet. I've been here for 3 weeks in a row, and I've only heard, let's call the governor, let's call the governor. The governor's not going to answer my phone call. I'm the wrong political party. Has any one of the other counselors called the governor to see if they could help us out? Probably not. If that's the only thing that people are saying, let's call the governor, we're in big, big trouble. And we need help. As Sue said, we have a big problem. I understand that, but there's got to be a better solution than relying on the state to help bail us out. If we don't come up with a viable solution for everybody to go forward in a happy manner. Our only recourse as taxpayers, whose taxes are going up while you're cutting our services, is to vote in people who make sound fiscal decisions so we don't end up in this mess next year. As Mr. Diego said, we're probably going to be back here next April. I hate that. I don't want that. I just wish there was a better
10
way.
seconds, Mr.
Thank
Gabek.
you.
Mr. Udall.
James Udall, 106 Osborne Street here in Auburn. One of the things that is impacting the budget, the city budget, and it's rarely talked about, even though I've mentioned it to everybody on this side of the brass rail, is the owner-occupant homeownership rate in Auburn. The owner-occupant homeownership rate in Auburn is about 48%. A typical American city, average city, it's 65%. Any city that you guys would want to emulate and say we want to be like that city, they're probably more like 66 or 70% owner occupancy rate. Why does that matter? It matters because there are studies out there from the New York Board, Federal Reserve Board of New York, the New York State Office of Comptroller, some studies by Penn State University recently, that for every non-owner occupied home, costs the city, an average city the size of Auburn, between $1,500 and $3,500 per year. If you multiply that by how many owner-occupant properties we don't have, we're about roughly 1,000 to 1,100 short. We should, to be at 65%, we'd have about 1,100 more owner-occupant properties. If you cut that 3,500 and 1,500 number in half, say it's $2,000, it costs the city in extra services, EMS, police overtime, code enforcement. It also impacts the city in the form of what's called tax assessment decay. Your tax assessments are lower in neighborhoods that are high renter concentrations because most of the landlords in the city don't take care of their properties. They're blighted, a lot of them are blighted, a lot of them are eyesores. They bring property values down. This brings your tax base down. The point is, if you took $2,000 per owner-occupied property times 1,000 of them that you're short, you're talking that's $2 million per year. Now that doesn't solve the entire budget problem. That solves, a little bit more than half of it. But the city of Auburn has been on the wrong track as far as its owner occupancy rate for a long, long time. It didn't take one administration to get here. It didn't take two administrations. This has been an ongoing problem for a couple decades, maybe more. The city needs to focus on stimulating owner occupancy, getting first-time home buyers into these renter-occupied properties. The curb appeal will improve. The need for city services will decrease, and it will help the budget in the long run. So this doesn't solve the problem today, unfortunately, but this is something that the city needs to work on. And I've spoken individually with everybody, tried to anyway, for a couple minutes to say, hey, this is a big problem that the city of Auburn has at the
10
moment.
seconds, Mr. Rudolph.
And it would do the city, it would be smart of the city to look into ways to encourage the transfer of renter properties into owner-occupant properties.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard this evening? Mr. Bufano.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Bufano, Auburn, Union President, Police Department, your local 95, 46 North Street. Members of City Council, tonight I'm here to speak on facts, not fear, because regardless of anyone's opinions.
Point of order, Mayor. Could we get Mr. Bufano to state his residency?
I beg your pardon?
State your residency, please.
46 North Street, speaking in capacity of the Union President of Auburn City Police Department.
The rules state you will state your name and residency for the record.
That is the residency. That's where I have mailing address for the
It's
union.
for your workplace, but it's not your residency. Mr. Gayback stated his residency.
That's his
representing
decision. Mr. City Clerk.
Your residency is Morris Street, for the record. Thank you.
Does this 3 minutes start over?
Yeah.
You can, yep.
Sure.
Thank you.
Morris Street, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of City Council, tonight I'm here to speak on facts, not fear. Because regardless of anyone's opinions, narratives, or attempts to downplay it, this city is not all sunshine and rainbows. There is violence here. There are drug dealers here. There are gangbangers here. And we deal with it every single day. Let me give you a reality check. The state provides the City of Auburn grant money to our police department to help combat gun violence. This money isn't just given away. It is awarded for cities that have statistically high violent crime rates, of which Auburn is qualified for. Therefore, we have the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Unit and Strive Grant, which combats domestic violence because of how high violent crime and domestic violence is within the City of Auburn. Think about that. At our current staffing levels, in conjunction with the state aid, our police department was able to reduce crime over 33%. You don't think that gets worse with fewer officers, with cuts to this department, with less proactive work being done every single day? Because it will. Implementing the proposed cuts by the Chief Andrasco, last week will significantly impact every community member, business owner, and visitor due to the anticipated rise in crime with said cuts. Now let's talk about something else, accountability. I urge you, the City Council, to not only do what's right financially, but to do it in a manner that at least affects public safety. Any reduction in force is a step backward for the City of Auburn. You control the budgets, you control the financial calls, you have the ability to get the city out of this position. Defunding the police department or any resources that we have in this city, our home, will ultimately cost the city in future tax revenue and, most importantly, potentially loss of lives. We show up no matter what. We answer over 30,000 calls a year with less than 70 police officers. We go from talking to kids in this community to responding to shootings, overdoses, domestics, and death in a matter of minutes. We don't ask who you voted for. We don't care about politics. Mr. Mayor, remember, we endorsed you. We care about one thing: keeping this city safe. It's all we care about. We will continue to fight to preserve APD staffing levels by any means necessary. Look around this room. Look at the people standing behind me, or sitting. Look at the people out in the hallway. They're here to show their commitment to fight for public safety.
15 seconds, Mr.
Because that isn't an option. This is data. This is statistics, and statistics means something has already happened, because violence is real and it needs to be addressed. We're out here doing the work. All we're asking is simple: don't defund the police for sake of our safety and the community, the safety of the community. This is about people, this is about safety, and this is about the future of our city. Thank you.
Ms. Okazek, please.
My name is Pam O'Cusick. I live here in Auburn on Chapman. Police are using fear and intimidation and blaming the city council, mayor, and the mayor for possible cuts to the budget. The very people trying to work to save their jobs, not cut them. Maybe, just maybe, and I quote, coming to the table prepared to listen to facts and to respond with one of its own would probably be a more effective way for the police to argue against cuts than selling fear. They are now showing an actual murder on social media to prove a point of how important they are. But they can't show the whole uncut version of that video because of the vulgar language the officers are using during the video, and it has to continue to be censored. Review and request most body cam videos, and this is what you'll find to be the case with most of the videos out of our fine officers of the city police. Force, foul language being used in most videos, which is an outright misuse of their own rule of conduct in their contract that each one of them signed. That can be found in the code cause 4.2, paragraph C. Last week, as I stood at the podium, I was told I could only direct my comments to the council. Yet Officer Budafano, president of the Auburn Police Local Unit, called out all six hired new officers by name and had them all stand and said that they were those new hires' family members, and yet you said nothing to him. I said he got special treatment and needs to quit hiding behind his badge and getting special treatment. Here's a question. How many current officers or their parents or loved ones actually live within the city limits and pay city taxes? I'm talking city property taxes, school taxes, county taxes. Let's not raise our hands if we live in Weedsport, Troop, Senate, Moravia, Brutus, Elbridge, Jordan, Union Springs, or Aurelius, right here in Auburn city limits. So if you want to stand up for no job cuts, stand up for everybody's job, not just your own, and don't use fear and intimidation. Everyone's jobs matter. And I will quote one of your own wives or girlfriends from last week who said, and I quote, I guess when it comes to standing up for the people who we think matter, we're standing up tonight. That was last week, for the people who we think take priority
10 seconds,
and matter
Mr.
the
President.
most. We have our priorities straight. That's for the police. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Good evening. My name is Norm J. Davis, 98 North Division Street. I'll make this brief, Mayor. I'm also a union man, UAW. But I'm here to hope the City Council understands we're blessed to have these fine workers here.
Mr. Davis, you have to address this body, sir.
I'm sorry. Oh, my error. We're blessed to have these workers here to help take care of our city. And I just hope when all the dust has settled that these workers will continue to be proud and work for the city because the city is treating them right. It's not about fire, police, because they're all one family. We're all one family. I've been here a long time. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I used to be the former head of the Neighborhood Housing Commissioner here in this city for 10 years. So I'm fully abreast of what's going on. So I just hope and pray that we use common sense and love and get these problems resolved, because we've got the best city employees in this state, as far as I'm concerned, in this country. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop. No, I called this gentleman. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You're next, though. Come on down.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Bishop, and I live at 19 Bradford Street, as you're well aware, Mr. Mayor. Because every week I keep asking you for some simple information that's legally the city is obligated to give me, and you ignore it. Just like with my sign here, welcome to Auburn, don't drink the water. You claimed last week that the buck stops with you. You claim that you even have a little placard right on your desk in your office that says that. Well, you've spent over 80 grand at least since obviously you've been in office here in Auburn. But not 1 cent for stable isotope analysis, not 1 cent. Even though it would conclusively prove who is polluting the lake and in what ratio. Your own buddy, when you ran this Wasco Now program, came up to me and told me so. Why do you think I've been down here every week? And then talk about retribution. Remember after I started speaking out? I think we've spoken enough about that. That's why I'm after those FOIL request records that are legally entitled to, that you've ignored. So now I can understand why people start showing up at your door like you were complaining about last week. Now, I don't think I'd be so gauche to actually do such a thing. I'd rather park an LED truck there. At least let the neighbors know, hey, don't drink the water. I mean, these people here, they're all voters. They're all taxpayers too. And they have to drink that water too. And that's a crime to allow Groton and Moravia to cheat and dump that undertreated sewage. I've told you so. A $5 test from Amazon would tell you so if you went and walked out there and tested the outflow pipe. But I have to do that. I have to be the bad guy, so be it. Just like last week's, speaking up for the police department and the fire department. Even though maybe, yes, sometimes I might not agree with an individual within those departments, I'm still going to back them up. And I'm a taxpayer. You know that. I'm willing to pay the fee that it takes. But the problem is that all these years the buck stopped with you. Well, now the buck is in your hand, Mr. Mayor, you and the City Council. Good luck to you. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good evening.
You too. See you next week. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Paul Farinelli, and I live at 20 School Street in Auburn, New York. I'll be succinct, but I'm adding my voice to the growing chorus of Auburn residents respectfully asking that our City Council consider or reconsider its contract with Flock Safety. As a private for-profit corporation, Flock is categorically not accountable to elected officials and thus the public at large in any meaningful way. These are hardly just license plate readers, as they also, by Flock's own admission, track an absurd amount of additional info and can share it at their own discretion with any public or private entities. Even if we were to very charitably assume good faith on Flock's part, there are no guardrails in place which would prevent this surveillance system from expanding considerably without any consent from us going forward. This process has been happening in real time as Flock's terms of service and data sharing policies are repeatedly revised without sufficient notice to affected communities around the country. I'll just end by referencing the Supreme Court case Carpenter v. United States from 2018, where the court explicitly rejected arguments that simply being in public forfeits Fourth Amendment protections. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the government's access to 127 days of cell site location data, tracking movements on public roads, achieved near perfect surveillance as if it had attached an ankle monitor to the phone's user, quote. The court also said, quote, a person does not surrender all Fourth Amendment protection by venturing into the public sphere, end quote, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jenna Powers, Main Street, Aurora. I'm here again this evening to discuss the concerning Flock camera contract. I again want to stress I'm not asking APD to avoid LPRs altogether, just this concerning third party. Flock didn't secure their first municipal contract until late 2020, despite the fact that they began in 2017. During the pandemic, when everyone was cooped up at home, domestic violence alone increased 25 to 33% globally. These rates naturally declined as we returned to our work and school routines and more housing options became available. Flock credits themselves for this reduction percentage, when in reality it had absolutely nothing to do with their installation. They use skewed data to convince municipalities that they're necessary, and they use skewed data when reporting on reduction, refusing to acknowledge the situational factors that contributed. That's deceptive. Flock has used deceptive language to Chief Androsco and the citizens, stating they don't share data at federal and state levels. What they fail to mention is that they claim no ownership of a customer's data. They just have the license to all of it. So therefore, they can technically say they don't share, while also allowing any of their customers, which consist of federal and state entities, local law enforcement, private companies, and some public facilities, access to their national lookup tool. That's deceptive. Speaking of public facilities, a recreational facility in Dunwoody, Georgia, just had a local Catch Flock leadership member, Bob Carter, watching little girls he had no association with doing gymnastics 182 times, 22 of which were recorded. Why would he do that? Flock is deceptive. So much so they remove themselves from the Internet Archive so customers aren't able to clearly see the content changes made on their website, notably the terms and conditions, which changed drastically in February. They removed the line that explicitly stated they would not sell customer data. They removed every guardrail that ensured they would not use our data for machine learning training. Previously, Flock's contracts used the law of the state where the customer is located. The February change replaces this with mandatory Georgia, requiring mediation and arbitration under Georgia law. This tilts the playing field heavily in Flock's direction. The liability protections were gutted and they removed all indemnification language. So who is actually responsible here? In the event of damage to property, data breaches, privacy litigation, wrongful arrest, civil rights claims, misuse by Flock employees, like the one I just mentioned about the one watching little girls 182 times, they are not responsible. So who is? Flock is saying they aren't well capping their liability at 12 months of fees. So according to the citizen, $30,000 with no exception for gross negligence or willful misconduct. So is the city liable, and are they going to pay out for that?
10 seconds,
Even if
Ms.
we
Powers.
could prove Flock was at fault, it'd be capped at $30K. That's significant exposure for city government operating on taxpayer funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, sir.
Hi there, my name is Mike Kumi. Address is 73 Standard Avenue, right here in Auburn. I guess I'll start off. I'm first vice president of the Cuyahoga County CSEA Employees Division, Unit 6250. And seeing that the city is in such a deficit just keeps reminding me how much the county is and how the county keeps making the same choices that the city seems to be posing right now with cutting positions, potentially services that are going to only further impact the issues that we currently face. I think the point of order earlier with Mr. Bufano is a good example of exactly how we get in this situation, focusing on the little details, not the real message of what's being sent here. Because I'm sure a lot of people can ask themselves the question of, we're $5 million in debt. Why did we not start considering cutting positions at $4 million, at $3 million? Why now? That's to say, on top of cutting services and positions in the fire department and police department and public works, what have you. All it's going to do is put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound that is going to swallow up this city. There is no treatment plan. You can raise taxes. Maybe in the past they should have been raised more to kind of curb the issues that we're dealing with today. But after buying my house with my wife back in 2024, we're here to stay, regardless of, things hopefully getting better or potentially getting worse. And I really just want to know, how is it that we can be different? Because Auburn is no different from any other municipalities or counties across really the entire U.S. So many other places are facing the same exact issue. And are we just going to continue on that example, or are we going to stand out and actually make different choices? Are we just going to cut services, and then when people continue to leave because there's not enough police officers to respond to their issues, or firefighters to put out whatever might be going on with their home or their business, well, that's less tax revenue. Here we are again. I really don't understand why, whether it's county meetings, city meetings, it's the same thing every single time. I don't know why other decisions cannot be made. And I hope that with people like Craig on the city council now, coming up with good ideas, who really seems to want to do something different,
10 seconds,
that
sir.
maybe new examples can be followed upon, that maybe we don't have to get up here talking about how important it is not to cut the very things that are still holding the city together. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard? All right, we'll close the public to be heard. Meeting minutes will be forthcoming next week. City manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 open bid opportunities on the website: the 2026 Road Improvement Program, which is due on April 21st, and the 2026 CDBG Sidewalk and Curb Programs, both of which are due on April 28th. Burgess Street Culvert Project, the city is resuming this. Please visit the city's website for further information and details, and I'll point you to the press release that was provided yesterday. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Haynes? Reports from members of council? Hearing none, we'll move on to ordinance number 2 of 2026, amending the Auburn City Code zoning, chapter A305-28, cannabis uses. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Clarko, second by Councilor Cuddy.
Ordinance number 2 of 2026. Whereas the City Council of the City of Auburn on February 15, 2018 by ordinance number 1 of 2018 amended in its entirety the previous zoning ordinance, and whereas the City Council of the City of Auburn on October 6, 2022 by ordinance number 2 of 2022 added sections to the zoning ordinance which address permissible uses of cannabis. And whereas ordinance number 1 of 2024 updated chapter 305 of the city code to bring the city's ordinance in compliance with updated state regulations. And whereas ordinance number 2 of 2026 is proposed to update chapter 305-28A2 of the city code to amend the hours of operation for New York State cannabis adult use license locations. And whereas the passage of ordinance number 2, 2026 is categorized as a type 2 action pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act and New York State Code Rules and Regulations 6715C16, and therefore pursuant to the NYCRR section 617.3F, a determination under seeker is not required. Now therefore be it enacted, the Auburn City Council does hereby amend the following sections of ordinance number 2 of 2022. Section 305-28 cannabis uses. A, general regulations. All cannabis uses are required to obtain and maintain the applicable New York State adult use license. 2, on-site consumption in retail dispensary locations may only operate between the hours of 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. Further enacted, the council does hereby adopt ordinance number 2 of 2026, attached and incorporated herein, which amends the following section, chapter 305. Again, section 305-28-2, on-site consumption in retail dispensary locations may only operate between the hours of 9 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Very good.
Be it further enacted, the foregoing amendment will take effect immediately.
Any question or discussion from the council? Councilor Diego.
Yeah, I think probably the thing we should be looking at with this is it's not even about the hours, it's about who's going to enforce the code. We ran into this multiple weeks ago when this came up, that they were already open past the 8 to 8, and then I think the tough part about it was when yourself, obviously, you told them, you know, they got to do what they're supposed to do, as we all did, and then we go back a couple of days after that meeting and they're still open past the code anyways. I think it's more about putting a point person in charge of this. Somebody's got to be the person that's going to enforce the times, and that it's not just for cannabis dispensaries, it's for anybody that's breaking the code in the city. I just it doesn't sit well with me that we are working with them to extend the hours out, even though they were breaking the hours in the first place, and we made it crystal clear how we were gonna go about this the next time, and they were still doing what they wanted to do anyways, that's an issue. So I think we should obviously identify who the point person is to enforce the time. We should also probably put a policy in place as far as what happens when they don't stick to the code. Maybe it's gotta be some type of fine or something, but there can't be any wiggle room in that policy that can be deciphered by a judge or somebody else after the fact. You know, the code's the code. That's what it's put in place to follow it. I don't have an issue, like I said, with the hours. I have an issue with them doing what they want when they feel like it.
Sure. Councilor Cuddy?
This is for the city manager and the corporation council. Could we impose a fine and put it in the fee schedule for this budget?
Yeah, we absolutely.
I'm sorry, manager. This is a use prescribed by the zoning ordinance, which you're about to vote on, of course. Any violation would be enforced by the code enforcement officer, who is our zoning officer as well. The zoning code and the uniform code already contain penalties for violating each code. They're both subject to any civil action as well. So that is perhaps a long-winded way of saying we have an individual who is tasked with enforcing violations of the zoning code. That's Senior Code Enforcement Officer Mark Perry, and Mr. Selvik is presenting. He's the department head. Perhaps he can speak on that further, but we have that in place already, so it will just be a matter of internally shoring up those controls, and I'm sure Mr. Perry is already completely aware of this and on it.
So I guess what would be the deterrent for staying open later? I mean, is there a possibility to impose a fine? That's what the question was.
A ticket, an appearance ticket could be issued where the offending business would be brought into court, and the city would have to prove that a violation of the zoning code took place at that time. If we were to do so, the judge could issue a fine pursuant to the municipal code.
Okay. What are the fines for a situation like this? If there was like a liquor, a place that sold liquor.
Well, I think, Councilor Cuddy, you're getting to the heart of the matter, frankly, in the violation of the uniform code carries a relatively light penalty. For a simple violation, I believe it's a fine of $250. However, violating local law would certainly impact this theoretical business's ability to maintain their license. And that, of course, is, perhaps it's not a license to print money, but it appears to be very close to that. Any concerns that we have regarding illicit or licensed cannabis businesses through the mayor and the chief of police and the code enforcement office, we've been diligent in reporting to the Office of Cannabis Management, and they have, as you no doubt recall, come in on several occasions to flex their muscles. So a violation of a local code pursuant to the only thing that a municipality can regulate pursuant to the cannabis law, that's time, place, and manner of cannabis sales, I think would have a serious impact on a licensed business's ability to continue to operate. And I would assume that any responsible business owner would take that threat very seriously.
That is good. I think the reason why Councilor Diego is concerned is that it hasn't been enforced. So I think it's clear that there is a desire by the council to make sure that this law is enforced from here on in, because we made it known the first time we talked about this how serious we were. Obviously, as Councilor Diego mentioned, they didn't really follow what we had suggested. So I'm hopeful that we can follow through on that, and hopefully the code as it is enough of a deterrent. But you know, I just hope that we can make sure they're following the rules.
I'm curious, and if we don't have the answer to this right now, it's okay. But there are only 2 shops in Auburn right now. Are both of them violating the code, or is it just one?
When they first proposed it, the code read 8 to 8, which we're trying to change today. One of them was open 4 days a week till 8. They were open till 9 o'clock the other 3 days. The other one was open till 9 o'clock 4 days a week and 10 o'clock 3 days a week. That's more the issue, and I'm not saying it's Mark Perry's responsibility. If it is, if we're going to task him to do that, that's one thing. But these guys were open for over a year like this, which tells me that the communication wasn't there. Somebody didn't tell somebody because they were just doing what they wanted. I did find it ironic when they were interviewed for the newspaper that they said they didn't know, when obviously they did know because they came and asked for us to change it so they can continue to operate. So that was a little, it wasn't accurate as far as I'm concerned. We just need some enforcement, and the fines have to fit, quote unquote, the crime. You can't just come into the city and open businesses. It's not about bringing in the revenue and all that. It's about following the code as far as I'm concerned, because if you let them do whatever they want, I guess everybody else is going to do the same thing. You can't hold one responsible if you're not holding everybody responsible.
Anyone else? So, Councilor Diego, I agree with you, and Councilor Cuddy as well. I think we do have to have a better mechanism in place to enforce it. There are 2 dispensaries. One of the owners was here the night when we had the first reading. I was very clear, you were all here, that they needed to shut down within the hours. They chose not to. I did stop at their location and had a very frank conversation with them. Since then, they have. The other location did reach out to me and apologized. They, according to them, and they weren't the ones asking for the extension, they were following state rules, and there is a time frame that they can be open. And what they said was the license comes from the state, so they didn't realize that there was local changes to the hours. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I do know they have not been open since after hours since then. What I would say is between give and strive, when they're out doing their work, if they see that one of these locations is open, we need to know about it. If we want to write a ticket locally, that's fine, but my recommendation would be to call the New York State Office of Cannabis Management, because the way we can hurt them is to take their license away from them. And that's what happens to a bar, right? ABC shows up, they're open after hours, they get in trouble for it. So I think we need to use the state enforcement mechanism. So however we make that happen, please let's follow through on that. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Please call the roll.
Councilor Diego?
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes.
Councilor Clarko?
Aye.
Mayor Genettino?
Aye. Council Resolution Number 32 of 2026, establishing a retirement incentive. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Overstreet Wilson, second by Councilor Clarko.
Council Resolution 32 of 2026, whereas the City of Auburn's most current collective bargaining agreements contain a retirement incentive that provides employees who are eligible for retirement eligibility for a one-time retirement incentive of $10,000 in a lump sum payment, or a credit of $12,500 toward the retiree portion of the retiree health insurance premium, provided that they retire within the specified time frames. And whereas there are a number of employees of the City of Auburn who are not represented by unions and are not the beneficiaries of benefits that have been offered to union members who are also eligible for the same retirement incentive. And whereas certain eligible employees did not take the incentive in the required time frame, and whereas the city is now desirous of establishing a one-time retirement incentive to all previously eligible employees, and whereas the one-time retirement incentive includes the city contributing an additional 15% of the annual health insurance premiums to retirees as outlined in respective collective bargaining agreements or senior management personnel policy for up to a period of 5 years after retirement, ending on or before June 30th, 2031, depending on retirement date or until reaching eligibility for Medicare, whichever comes sooner. And whereas all eligible employees within the City of Auburn organization irrespective of retirement tier, who have not taken the retirement incentive outlined in current collective bargaining agreements or senior management personnel policy, are eligible for this incentive. Whereas if an employee is eligible for the retirement incentive as outlined above and or included in the collective bargaining agreements, they can apply for this one-time retirement incentive on or before May 15, 2026, with their last day of service being on or before June 30th, 2026, and the retirement application cannot be rescinded. And whereas eligible employees cannot combine retirement incentives and must choose only one, and whereas if an employee wishes to retire with penalty, they will be eligible for this one-time retirement incentive, and whereas the one-time retirement incentive is expected to create cost savings from reduced wage and pension costs for the city. Now therefore be it resolved, the Auburn City Council does hereby adopt the one-time retirement incentive program for all employees who, as of this date of this resolution, are eligible according to the terms outlined in the body of the resolution.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from the council? Councilor Diego?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does everybody, because now this is going to include union, non-union, does everybody pay 50% when they're retired?
So most unions do pay 50% of their health insurance premiums. CSA professional pays 40%.
So
that's in their agreement.
So would they go down to, quote, they take 15% off the 40%, or are we locking everybody in at the 35% for 5 years?
We are doing the 15%
off of
based off of whatever's in their contract.
Great. All right. Another question I had, and I don't ever think this is going to be the case, but I wish it was. Do we have something in place in case we actually have too many people leave? The reason I ask is that it's going to affect services regardless. Obviously, they got to be done by the 30th of June. It's just an example. If you had 10, 11 people at the police department leave, beforehand, and you were looking at laying off possibly 7 or 8 people, now we're in another situation where we don't have enough people, even though enough people retired. I'm just looking at, for staffing and safety reasons as well. I don't know if can we actually decline an application at this point if we had to?
We obviously would have to review operational impacts with our department heads, depending on how many folks did sign up for that. So that is something that we would need to take into consideration. At this moment, because I don't know how many people will take it, I do not have that plan in place.
Right, thank you.
I do.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson?
You may not know this off the top of your head, and I was reading through the resolution, and there's a lot of whereases, and you could have said the number. I probably just didn't catch it, but how many of our entire city employees are eligible for this incentive? Not just one department, but
right.
How many people qualify?
I think I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
I know some certain departments, some of the numbers, but I don't know for every union or every department how many are qualified. I can get back to you on that.
And the other thing, I'm going to piggyback what Councilor Diego said. In the event X amount of APD employees chose to take this incentive, we wouldn't need to cut positions, correct? Because it would balance itself out. Or would we still be considering the cuts if folks still took that retirement incentive?
Any use of the retirement incentive is going to help reduce the impact of personnel cuts.
And at this point in time, are there people specifically in APD that could take the retirement incentive to save jobs of the positions that are considered being cut, in addition to the positions that are currently open?
Yes, there are employees eligible in the police department to take this incentive.
Mm-hmm. And have you all had maybe preliminary conversations with some of those folks? Or have, excuse me, have department heads come to you and said that within my department, there are a few people that are considering that?
There are some people that have come to, whether it's HR or department heads, to ask about the incentive. We provided communication to all unions at the end of March, and again last week related to the incentive. In addition, I appreciate HR doing this. She had the New York State Retirement System come in to answer questions. That meeting happened today. All employees were invited to attend that to make sure that they were understanding the implications of the incentive.
Okay, so I guess I'm just going to say it again, and I think it might just be for my own edification as I struggle to think about what our decisions, the impacts of our decisions. If folks participate in taking this incentive, it will save jobs.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Are you all set, Counselor?
I am all set.
Counselor Diego?
I think the one number, not stepping over you by any means, Jenny, when we first put this out a couple months ago, I believe it was 28 people between the police department and fire department before we opened it up to more that were actually eligible.
Thank you, Counselor. I was aware of those numbers. I just don't know across the board after we opened it up. Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions?
Yep, I have a follow-up question. So I do remember that number. Thank you, Counselor Diego. But if we look at it across the entire spectrum, if folk from another department choose to take this, does the savings trickle down to other?
So that's not yet determined.
Okay.
We are in some conversations with a couple different unions, so that, which I can't really specify those conversations right now. So those savings, it would depend on some of those conversations as we get closer. It's really important for us to understand who is taking it so that we can better answer your question.
Thank you. And I have no more.
All set, Counsel? Please call the roll.
Counselor Diego?
Yes.
Counselor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Counselor Cuddy?
Yes.
Counselor Clarko?
Aye.
Mayor Genesee?
Aye. Council Resolution Number 33 of 2026, adopting the fiscal year 2026 to 2030 capital improvement plan. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Clarko, seconded by Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Council Resolution 33 of 2026, whereas the City of Auburn is authorized and empowered under the New York General Municipal Law, Article 5, Section 99G, to undertake the planning and execution of a capital program, and whereas the Auburn City Council desires to implement a capital improvement program to provide for the maintenance and improvement of public infrastructure in support of the city's visions and goals outlined in the city comprehensive plan and other adopted planning documents. Whereas the Auburn City Council wishes to adopt and approve the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2026 through 2030 to ensure that the city achieves its desired outcomes for a prosperous and sustainable community. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Auburn that the city hereby adopts and enacts the fiscal year 2026 through 2030 capital improvement plan, and the resolution will take effect immediately.
Questions and discussion from the council? Councilor Diego.
I was looking at that the very first page when you were talking about the debt plan on the bottom there. I just wanted to, maybe Ms. Selvig could speak on it. The number, I don't want to call it deceiving, but it is, because we have that where we can remove the sewer from that number. So it shows us going from, 79% down to 42% in the last few years. But that's because that $95 million is taken out, correct?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Councilor Diego is referring to my background memo as part of the council packet. So if you go to the background memo on the first page under the background for the plan, during the draft presentation for the capital improvement plan, there was a request from council to get more information regarding the city's debt ceiling. So as part of my background memo, worked with the comptroller's office to provide that additional information. So for council and the public's information, so the city actually does provide our annual official statement on the city website. So any of our debt information, sorry, there's a little feedback. Any of our debt information is publicly available if anyone did need to reference it. So the last 5 years of the fiscal year end, so going back through our official statements, that is what the calculation is for our percent of debt contracting power. So New York State Office of State Comptroller is the one that actually is the one that has guidance related to constitutional debt limit. So in New York State, there's limits on how much a local government can incur for debt. So for cities, the formula is a debt limit is a percentage of the 5-year average full valuation of taxable property within the municipality. Debt issued for purposes of water supply and distribution and certain types of short-term borrowings can be excluded from the debt. In this case, sewer exclusions for the limit of debt related to sewer projects and certain types of self-liquidated debt are also available for exclusion. So knowing that we were going to be taking on a very large biosolids project and wastewater treatment plant improvement project, we looked at how much we were going to need to borrow. And as we saw that our percent of debt contracting power was drastically increasing related to those bond ordinances from 21, 22, and 23. In February of 24, working with the comptroller's office, we made that application to State of Comptroller to exclude those two bond ordinances together, which is the $95 million in debt.
So, and with that being said, then that'll allow us obviously to borrow more against the debt limit by removing that?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions, Council? Yeah, keep going.
There's a couple pages after that when we get to like the fiscal implications page there. Was looking at the body cam tasers for the police department, and not really a question, just maybe a suggestion. Have we ever checked into collaborating with like the sheriffs and the state police and buying more or signing, you know, getting more, get a better price, obviously, if you're buying more than just one entity? Just trying to look at ways of saving money if we're all using, obviously if they're the same, I don't know if they are Axon for the body cams or, you know, Motorola for whatever. Is that something that we've looked at so that maybe we can get a cheaper price on that?
So I believe we're on a similar system with the sheriff's office. I would need to talk with Officer Hare, who really is our local expert in body-worn cameras. Yeah, so our 5-year lease is coming due this coming year. We were very lucky in initially starting the project with Department of Justice with a grant, and then being able to match that with the ARPA funds over these last 5 years, so that way there was no actual cost for the body-worn camera project to city taxpayers. But that lease term is up, and we are going to have to pay attention to this for the next budget year. But collective procurement is definitely something that our procurement office is getting really good at, and the county is getting really good at, so we could take a look at that.
I appreciate it. Going into that city court expansion, I know that's been a big topic for us the last few weeks because it came out kind of out of the blue again. Trying to figure out that 2.6 million, that number's probably wrong as far as, because that was 2 years ago, right? So it's probably even more than that at this point. What, just off the top of your head, what do we collect from the county? This is going to double the size of the court, so the lease is going to double as well, I'm assuming. Do we have a number?
That's correct. So we currently pay about $110,000 a year. I think I'm looking at Corporation Counsel. Does that sound right? So for our lease agreement.
Generally speaking, as you know, Ms. Selvig, Mr. Brennan handles those negotiations for our office.
Okay. So our current lease agreement, I think, is about $110,000. we will be roughly doubling the size of court in that building. So just based upon the current square footage, you know, you could assume that we would be doubling our lease agreement with the county. And that is not inclusive of the capital repayment then that would need to happen for the improvements.
Okay. And then one last thing on the landfill, the solid waste fund borrowing there. What do we actually pay to have those landfill cells closed?
So let's see here. I did pull a little bit of information on the sewer fund, well, landfill fund and solid waste fund for debt. So as of fiscal year end 6/30/25, right, for long-term debt, I think we're getting very close to wrapping up 2 older bond ordinances for that, and that's about $151,000 that's left. And then short-term borrowing, so this is related to the most recent closure of cells 3 and 4, and then also the issuing of bond ordinances for the transfer station and the related vehicles. We're roughly about $6.5 million in short-term. I'd have to look at what the schedule is for the short-term debt to move to long-term debt. I could get you a little more information on what the payments are going to look like. But related to what we're currently taking in for revenue, you know, and the payments for the Packers, I don't really see a lot of room in there right now to issue more project work for that fund.
Right, because we're going to be paying on that until it's paid off, so you obviously don't want to take on more debt when we have quite a bit as well already. Okay, just one more question. It was just more a comment. I was looking at the page 7 where you got the whole chart put together. Just something that I had picked up on off the top of my head. Maybe can we add a memo at some point showing what the impact of all of this is on the tax levy? Something along, you know, so we actually know what it is, and maybe even show the percentage for, like, as a column off of each one of these. I mean, obviously there's some huge purchases in there. It'd be nice to kind of flag the projects that we can defer and highlight per se the ones that need to be done by priority, but be able to run that off of the actual effect it's going to have on the tax levy, so we know, and we could actually take the ones that we have deferred and add them back in, maybe one at a time as the funding comes available, but being able to prioritize it, something along that lines maybe.
Yeah, so that's a great point for even city staff to pay attention to. So the 5-year plan does include every department's requests. I meet with the city manager and the comptroller, and based upon where we're at with funding, revenues, priority projects already approved by council, things that are under grant agreements or state contract agreements, those almost automatically go into the current fiscal year column. Ones that we know we might get CHIPS funding for, other revenue sources, those generally also make it in there as well. You know, for a great example is the DPW salt barn. That was a department priority request, maybe 4 or 5. It's in desperate need of replacement at this point. There is state grant funding that's been out there for it, which is why it's been added to the capital plan, but I can't prioritize it because I don't have a way to pay for it this year. So we do try to include projects that we know we can at least complete or have you know, already agreements in place to get the projects done.
Right, yeah, just to wrap it up on that, it just would be, I think where I was going with it was, so the council has a super clear look at exactly what we're trying to do, but what that's going to be the impact against the budget at the same time, because obviously we're in a tough spot right now, so it'd be, you know, something a little more clear for me. I mean, I can read the chart, and I'm sure everybody can. I'm not saying they can, but it'd be nice to see this is the project, this is going to be the impact on your budget, so we can know more, you know what I mean, and what the tax is going to be, the tax levy, because the money's obviously not there for too much at this point.
Yeah, we could work on that.
Councilor Diego?
What's that?
Are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The city manager has put a spending freeze. Now, how does the capital improvement project interact with that? Does the city manager's spending freeze override the capital improvement plan? Or are purchases continue to be made outside the purview of the city manager's spending freeze?
Capital accounts reside outside of the normal budget O&M for departments. So it is, I believe the current memo that went out was for budgetary, operating, and expenditures for the spending freeze.
That's correct.
So capital right now is operating independently of that, but we do pay attention. We have to balance the fund. So you can't have a capital expenditure account without the revenue account. So either it's been bonded for, it's got grant monies, or there's matching operating funds, you know, like the sub-watersheds, you know, planning grant, right? There was a match of $10,000 from operating funds in order to gain access to the $75,000 for water quality funds. So that $10,000 is actually removed out of the operating budget based upon the department head, and it's moved into capital. So that way those two, the expense and the revenue, balance.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there are a few vehicles that are still yet to be delivered, correct? Like as far as they've been bonded for, ordered, and
yes, I mean there's crest vehicles,
yes.
There's other vehicles that are under bond. Those are all sort of within the capital realm. Typically, these projects have council approvals outside of the operating budget. So most of the things that Christina has been talking through have different approvals that you go through. That would be outside of the spending freeze.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Yes. So for the APD body-worn cameras and the tasers, see, there's a 5-year lease, and it's $1.2 million. But it says the annual payment is $257,000, and it also says that a portion of that will come from APD, and then the responsibility of the general fund. How much of that is APD responsible for?
Yep. So leases operate slightly differently. So the lease then needs to be brought to council. It's voted upon, and then unless there's money already in a capital account to pay for the lease, like there was previously for the body-worn camera program before, this time there's not. So this would be something that needs to be budgeted as part of general fund, and the lease then would operate annually out of the general fund budget.
And you may not be able to answer this follow-up question. It may be the city manager or the mayor. Can the portion that the APD is responsible for, can that come out of the grants like the Strive, the Give, or the Crest? I'm going through the presentation that Chief Andrasco gave, so I'm just, and I'm looking at the descriptions that monies could be used for. So it is clear what it can be used for. So it seems that it's kind of flexible in its use, so that's why I'm asking.
Yes, the money is flexible. So we just did get our second year of Strive money allocated. The last I knew, there was only about $9,000 towards equipment.
You said 9?
9,000, yes. So we'll be bringing that resolution to you the first week of May to authorize that program for a second year. The Give program, I would have to take a look and see where they're at with the equipment budget. We have a great program manager at the state that helps us with both of these programs, so we could always see where maybe we could tweak the budget and request a budget amendment. I just don't know if there's a cap on equipment percentage for these programs. They really are meant to get to salaries and personnel to make sure we physically have the bodies out there on the streets doing the work.
Okay. And then my last question is, the New York State Office of Court Administration is requiring, so it's the word requiring. Does the word requiring come attached to, we can choose to do that in 4 or 5 years? Or is that requiring, we need to move forward now?
So That require means we need to move it forward now. We've been advised that if we do not move this project forward, that New York State can take our state aid.
Any other questions? I'd like to piggyback on a couple of things that were said and questions that were asked. I'll start with courts. I think it's a perfect example of what a municipality, and I'm not going to say Auburn, what a municipality in New York State is up against. We're, you know, in a budget deficit, people don't understand why there's a budget deficit. Projects like this are an example of that. We have state government telling us that you are going to do this or you're going to lose your funding. And we've made the case that we can't afford to do it. And the answer is you're going to do it or you're going to lose your state funding. So I think that that's a very timely example of what we're up against. Ms. Selvig, and I think I'm picking up what my colleagues are throwing down about budgeting, and you know, you have this very comprehensive plan put together, identifying the needs of every department across the city, not wants, but needs, and how are we going to pay for it, right? And if you've looked at it, and I know we all have, but for the public that hasn't, you identify the source of funds, right? And you have 6 different categories. One is bands and bonds. Another is department operating funds, which would come out of just our general fund, or if it's solid waste, out of their fund. Federal grants, New York State grants, reserves and cash, and other leases, private funds. And it's often a combination of those things, right? And I just want to give an example of how we try to leverage, not we, you, because you're doing the work, how the city organization tries to leverage every state and federal dollar available to us. Because people keep saying, well, why are you going to the state? Well, because that's our money. And we want to bring it back here. And if we don't, somebody else is going to bring it back to their municipality. So, interesting. Congressional requests, that's federal level. Congressman Mannion, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand sent communications to my office, to your office, asking for applications. Very competitive, right? Very large congressional district. Every municipality needs things. I think we applied for 3 things.
We did.
Right? Can you tell us what those 3 things were?
Based upon the capital requests that I get, I look at, and this is, so the mayor is referencing a request that comes back to every municipality in New York State for projects that could be potentially lined up for congressional funding, right? So the feds are set up slightly different than New York State agencies. They have their own set of priorities and funding baskets, right? So this year they limited it a lot to public safety, Army Corps of Engineers, parks, those type of projects that could be eligible. So unfortunately, you know, where I would like to ask for vehicles or anything that can help out the general fund first. General fund is our priority fund. It covers probably 60% or more of our city workforce. So I'm very sensitive to that and try to prioritize projects that could help out that fund. This year, looking at the federal agencies and what their priorities were, we chose police department project, which was to replace their very outdated
radios.
Yes, radios. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been a long week.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize for that.
It's fine. Yes, radios, and that's nearly a $700,000 project. You know, so we submitted that because we want to make sure that our first responders can communicate in real time with the county and our other agencies. It's very important to their safety as well as our public and those that they're responding to for calls and needs. The second actually is our Mill Street Dam. We were notified by DEC that we need to, you know, address the deferred maintenance status of the dam, and that thereby protects downtown. So it's always something that I'm trying to watch, and where we can apply for funding, we do. And then the third was our Veterans Park. There's been a long-standing request from our engineering department to take a look at this park, bolster the park. It needs new pavers, refreshing, new monuments could be erected. And we thought that would be a good match for the America 250 program. So those were the 3 projects that we submitted.
And we received notification, and it was reported in the local paper, that request number 1 has been backed by Congressman Mannion's office. And just to reiterate that, that's police equipment and technology upgrades, a $627,000 project. Another example of the exact opposite of defunding a department. I want to thank Congressman Mannion for supporting that project. Now I know the next step is to try to get the support from the senators as well. It's not a guarantee, but you're doing your best to make sure we secure that funding. And I actually signed that letter requesting that. That's my signature.
Yes, you did, Mayor.
You mentioned the $95 million project at wastewater. I just want to talk a little bit about that because everybody's probably thinking, wow, $95 million. And we have to borrow it because you need the money in advance. But can you talk a little bit, and we've talked about it extensively, but I'd like to talk about it a little more. How are we paying for that?
So the total budget currently is $99 million. And over the last 5 years, city staff has worked very, very hard actually on this project to come up with a funding plan that would not burden the sewer fund, and then try to take advantage of federal funds that were allocated through the IRA program. So myself and our Director of Municipal Utilities made application to New York State several times. First was our WIA grant of $9 million to help us cover just about 100% of soft costs for that project. We're at about 75–80% completion. I know I have a lot of wastewater staff here. And it's moving along really, really well. So there's that to help cover soft costs. And then we were eligible for a $25 million bill grant towards the project. And we've received half of that grant money. And then when the overflow retention facility portion of the project is done, we'll receive the other half. So that's $34 million in grants. The city was also eligible for, I want to say, another 25 or 30 million without having my numbers in front of me. I apologize. In 0% financing through the state for the project. So when you're, borrowing for 30 or 40 years, that really does add up and will be a savings to the sewer fund.
Yeah, so a $95 million necessary project because we know the DEC is going to be knocking on our door about the way we handle sludge from wastewater. That's just an example of how the staff across the board, not just in this building, but across the board, and the council, whoever it may be at the time, works diligently to listen to the department heads when somebody like Mr. Jensen comes to us and says, hey, we're going to be flagged for this. This is the way we've done it for decades. The DEC is cracking down on this. And oh, by the way, the cost of how we're doing this continues to escalate by tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And yes, this is a significant investment, but we can get half of it through grant funding and 0% financing. But at the same time, we can reduce operating costs by millions of dollars a year.
Yes.
That's the project.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. As far as the CIP goes, to advance a project that's not yet there, it has to come to the council for approval, correct?
Generally, yes. It depends upon if there's grant monies. So what would normally happen is, state grant program is going to be upon us here in May. I'll get departments that send in requests saying, hey, I know I didn't submit this project in the fall, but I might have need for this, for the next year. Can we take a look at this program? So if it's not budgeted, if it's going to go to capital, or if it's a grant request, we will do a grant application resolution. We do that for police, fire, DPW, planning projects routinely. So that's what kind of gets the ball started. At that point, it allows us to apply for the funds, and if awarded, then initiate the project and move forward through contracting and project management.
All right. So that's a technical way of saying just because it's in there doesn't mean we're spending the money on it.
Yes, so the plan is used by our financial institutions. They look at it and say, all right, how much need is there for capital or regular investment within the city? And come August, when we do our annual borrowing, it depends upon if we're going to be moving short-term bands to long-term borrowing. At that point, then we have to go through what we call our Moody's rating. This is like your credit score as a homeowner is probably the best way to describe it. So our credit score is doing pretty well right now, and we want to keep it on track. So by balancing our borrowing, by balancing our tax levy, by balancing growth in the city, that's what they're going to be looking for. And so annually, myself and the comptroller will sit down with Moody's and talk about where we're at as a community.
All right, very good. Any other questions from the council? Thank you, Ms. Selvig.
All right, thank you.
Please call the roll.
Councilor Diego.
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy.
Yes.
Councilor Calarco.
Aye.
Mayor Genatino.
Aye. Council Resolution Number 34 of 2026, authorizing the sale of equipment and miscellaneous items pursuant to the 2026 City of Auburn Procurement and Surplus Policy. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Cuddy, second by Councilor Calarco.
Council Resolution 34 of 2026. Whereas on January 22nd, 2025, the City Council passed Council Resolution 11 of 2026, which adopted City of Auburn Procurement and Surplus Policy. Procurement policy requires that the sale of surplus vehicles, equipment, and miscellaneous items with an estimated value of $1,000 or more be approved by Council. Whereas there is an extensive list of city-owned surplus, miscellaneous parts and other items which have outlived their useful life or are no longer necessary or useful to the city. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Auburn hereby authorizes the sale of the city-owned miscellaneous parts and other items in accordance with the 2026 City of Auburn procurement policy.
Any questions or discussion from the council?
Yeah, that covers everybody, right? That covers all the departments in the city. I see it.
That's
I know
correct.
we were talking about having excess. I only seen a few listed on the back, but is there any more? Or is that just a generalization of what we're going to do at this time?
I mean, the policy requires us to show you the items that we're going to put to auction, so that's what we're moving forward at this time.
Appreciate it.
How do we determine what items are going to auction?
I believe it's through department heads. Is that correct?
And once we receive funding from items that are sold at auction, what happens with that funding?
I'm going to ask Ms. Leeson to answer that question.
Good evening. So when we receive funding back from, typically we would use Auctions International to list any surplus property. When we get those checks back, it would go back to the fund of origin. So if it's police, it goes back to the general fund. If it's something from the water department, it would go to their fund.
And once we have this list and hypothetically speaking, we vote on it and it's approved, what is the mechanism to make sure that we follow through with this equipment being sold at auction?
So in my office, there is a person that's tasked with keeping track of capital assets. The department head has to submit a form notifying my staff that we're disposing of something. It also goes to the city manager's office. Depending on the department and what equipment we're selling, like if there's a title, associated with it, if it's a vehicle and it has title, there's additional steps in that. So if it's APD, Sergeant Gilfus typically manages the fleet and would work with DPW to list those vehicles. If it's DPW, their foreman would handle it there. So it's department specific, and then they would basically work with Auctions International to get it listed. You know, like I said, if there's title issue, that can kind of complicate it, but in theory, that should be fairly quick.
All right, very good. Any questions for Ms. Leeson?
If it doesn't get sold at auction, do we keep it for another year to sell it at auction, or do we scrap it?
I mean, I haven't seen anything recently that hasn't sold at auction, but yeah, we would have to scrap it if that didn't sell.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilor Diego?
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes.
Councilor Clarko?
Aye.
Mayor Genatino?
Aye. Award Resolution Number 35 of 2026, awarding a contract for real estate services. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Diego, second by Councilor Cuddy.
Award Resolution 35 of 2026, whereas the City of Auburn released a request for proposals for the purpose of hiring a real estate firm experienced in residential real estate to provide marketing and brokerage services for properties owned by the City of Auburn, including vacant buildings and vacant lots located throughout the city. And whereas on February 20th, 2026, the proposals were open for real estate services with submissions received from the following firms: the Real Estate Agency, Buyer Real Estate, Hunt Real Estate, L. Wilson Realty, Willow and Company, Property Brokers, and Alliance Real Estate. And whereas all firms responding to the request for proposals were qualified, and whereas interviews were offered to the Real Estate Agency, Buyer Real Estate, Hunter Real Estate, Hunt Real Estate, and L. Wilson Realty. Whereas the term of the contract will run through the adoption of this resolution for 1 year, with the option to extend the contract for 1 or 2 additional 1-year terms. Now therefore be resolved that the City Council does hereby award the contract for real estate services to the Real Estate Agency in the amount of 4% of sale price per property sold, the cost of which is to be charged the expenses for acquired properties, account number A1364440.
Any question or discussion from the council? Ms. Haynes, who served on the review committee for this RFP?
The review committee was myself, Mr. Garland, who led the process, Mary Beth Leeson, our comptroller, and Steve Selvik, the director of planning and economic development.
I know the real estate agency had our contract prior to this going out to RFP. Are we overall satisfied with the work that they've done on our behalf?
Yes, we are satisfied with the work that we've done. We let out this RFP. There was a change in staffing at the agency, and so we thought it would be a good idea just to freshen everything up and make sure we were square. And they have had the most experience with us, and we are excited to continue to work with them.
Do we have the option to, for certain properties, to not use them but use other services?
That's correct. Our land sale policy gives us several different options, including utilizing real estate brokerage company. It allows us to receive proposals directly from folks who want to take a look at a city lot. It requires us to go through a different process of notifying neighbors through that. We also, our land sale policy allows us to work with our housing partners and economic development partners in negotiating terms of sales, which we've done in different cases with, for example, Auburn Housing Authority Development Company. This agency will not have our whole suite of properties. It depends on, we have a group of staff that gets together and works on the best way to dispose of each property. So they will have some of our properties, but not all.
All right, very good. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Councilor Diego?
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes.
Councilor Clarko?
Aye.
Mayor Genatino?
Aye. Up next, we have our first budget presentation of the evening, Planning and Economic Development and Code Enforcement Budget Presentation for fiscal year 2026-2027. Mr. Steve Selvik, Director of Planning and Economic Development. Welcome, Mr. Selvik.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, City Manager Haynes. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to speak to you about our forthcoming budget for both planning and economic development and code enforcement. I'd like to start off with just acknowledging who it is that we actually serve within these two departments, and quite frankly, it comes down to everybody. City residents, developers, applicants, businesses, a significant number of board members on the Planning Board, Zoning Board, Historic Resource Review Board, Public Arts Commission. We also work very closely with state and federal agencies for funding opportunities, and we work diligently with members of other city departments. I'd like to begin with our code enforcement budget. As you know, our office handles permitting and inspections as well as licensing for plumbers and electricians. I want to thank you guys, the council, for last year when we went through this process. We reevaluated our fee schedule. We are able to put in a fee schedule with revisions that has ultimately helped us generate revenues that better match and align with our permitting. Ultimately, from within this fiscal year, year to date, we've issued approximately 900 building permits with over $128,000 in revenue. That represents a 25% increase from the same time last year. Again, better aligning our revenues to our expenses. In addition to building permitting, code enforcement is responsible for handling code complaints, working together with our code officers and our administrative staff. They issue violations, issue court appearance tickets, and conduct certificate of occupancy inspections on a regular and daily basis.
Hey, Mr. Silva, can I have one
Yep.
question about that slide there? It said that you guys wrote 2,121 violations. It said there's 1,207 open. What's that?
Ultimately, with our violations, anytime we have one, we do write one, we issue them. We are looking to get compliance. Compliance within the city of Auburn is slow. So ultimately, with that, we have that full amount of violations that have been written. Of that balance there, what is it, approximately 1,100 have been closed, meaning that they've been complied with, and that there are still 1,200 open violations on properties throughout the city at this moment.
And with those 1,207 open violations, are you guys, are there fines assessed on those right now, and that's what we're trying to collect?
They are issued in a, as part of a fee-based system. So upon your first violation, you have the opportunity to correct that. If you correct that, there is not a fee assessed with it. If you don't, there's a $50 fee, and then there's an escalating fee for every time we have to go back and do an inspection and it's not corrected. So it's $50, $100, and $200. At some point, ultimately what we do is write a court appearance ticket if we don't feel like we're going to get compliance with that violation.
Right, yeah, that was my last question. I see that we jumped down and we had 37 cases, and maybe this is just off the cuff, but how come, any reason why we went through the process to try to collect the fines and 19 of them were dismissed? I mean, obviously it's not you. I'm just wondering why the court were going through the process and they're throwing out more than 50% of these.
Generally, what is occurring in the court system is we are looking for compliance. More times than not, when someone gets to court, they are then willing to comply with whatever that requirement is. That doesn't necessarily in and of itself dismiss the fees that are associated with that process of getting there. But what they would have done is come to some agreement to address the underlying violation.
Generally, Mr. Sullivan, I can just go ahead. I assume most of these cases, if not all of them, are not health and safety related code violations, but rather more technical violations that, again, it's the department's position to try to force compliance, and it's just an extra level to that.
If they are health and safety violations, then what is our response to that?
Well, I'll jump in here on the legal side. Counselor, I'll just direct you and the rest of the council to the Grant Avenue Motel case that we had a couple of years ago. Our office worked with the was to file a case against the owners of the Grand Ave Hotel, and it was based on health and safety violations that the Code Enforcement Office had written. And really, the Code Enforcement Office brought to everyone's attention that it was a place that was known to house folks that were essentially unhousable in other situations. Law enforcement knew that, but we didn't know from a health and safety perspective how bad it was until codes got in there. They wrote violations, they took pictures, and our office filed an action in Supreme Court, which ultimately resulted in the owners of the hotel complying fully with all and carrying all code violations, including health and safety violations. And it's kind of the worst case scenario, but we're certainly not afraid to go there if the facts warrant.
All set, councilors. Proceed, sir.
Thank you. So currently within the Code Enforcement Office, our staffing consists of a senior code officer, two code enforcement officers, and 2 administrative assistants. There is one vacant CEO, code enforcement officer position, that is a result of a retirement earlier this fiscal year. That has remained vacant through the present. I have wanted to fill that position, but understanding the fiscal constraints that we are in, I have not been able to fill that particular position. My request for next year remains to maintain our existing positions that we have there, the 5 staff members, and then I've also asked to fill that CEO position. Here I have outlined our code enforcement budget. You can see the total budget is $660,000, almost $661,000. This does appear to represent a fairly significant increase over the $423, but as has been explained, I know in other department presentations, this does include the reallocation of benefits that were covered elsewhere within the city budget, as well as $29,000 in software expenses. You'll actually see just a slight increase in the requested budget specific to salaries, even maintaining that code enforcement position. And the jump within the operating, in addition to the software, is related to a request there that I have for seeking assistance with reviewing the chapters of our city code that are related to building permitting and code enforcement. Much of the information in there by today's standard is outdated. Specifically, Chapter 182 may be the biggest issue. It contains excessive technical building standards, many of which have been preempted by state law. So as the state has continued to develop their building code over the past 2-3 decades, a lot of the provisions that we have within our 182 are not necessarily applicable, and we can refer directly to the New York State Building Code. This would likely require a major restructuring of that particular chapter, and hence the need for some assistance in clearly defining what the role of our city code is versus that of the New York State Building Code. I'll also point out that within several of these sections, much of the language that is used is outdated terminology, 1980s and 1990s. That's how old our housing code is, and there's been changes as time has gone on, but it's time for a comprehensive look at that. As requested, each department head has prepared reduction scenarios. Again, these are scenarios. My proposed budget was presented as is, but in understanding the need to look at our budgets comprehensively, I have drafted both a 8% reduction and 11% reduction. The 8% reduction does abolish that vacant code enforcement officer position, including the associated expenses. So there was expenses for training and outfitting, things of that nature. I have, within this particular scenario, anticipated a bump in our overtime. Ultimately, we've done a really good job at managing the situation that we're in right now, being down a person, but what is happening is we are not completing the same number of CO inspections that we were with an extra person. And so what I'd be proposing to do is do some restructuring in the department to add some additional inspections to be carried on by each code officer, which ultimately, because there's only so many hours in a day, I'm concerned might end in a situation where we've generated some overtime. Going beyond that to the 11% reduction, I would also be looking to remove the on-call status of our officers. What this would do is during off hours right now, our officers carry an on-call phone. There's a cost associated with that as well as the response. This type of change, though, would have broader organizational impacts, and I'd have to work closely with police and fire, as well as anyone else that's working in off hours to understand how we could implement this and what the concerns of implementing this would be. I am going to transition to the planning budget, but if there's questions on code enforcement, I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Yeah, I just had one question. I know that those inspections you're talking about, the occupancy, that's a big revenue thing for the city. Obviously, with the department being short, we came up pretty short on that this year. Do we have anybody else, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Steve, by any means, but I kind of am. Is that something that people have to be trained just in the code enforcement office, or can we, I mean, we're quite a few behind on these occupancy, and that's a lot of money coming into the city that we're not bringing in because we don't have the help. Is there somebody that can do that as well?
For those particular certificate of occupancy inspections, you do have to be a certified code enforcement officer.
So if we don't fill the spot, then we're just going to have to.
So ultimately, if there's opportunities to assist with that somehow, we can look at that, but being short a code enforcement officer is going to restrict how many inspections we can in fact complete.
Appreciate it.
Sliding over to planning and economic development, changing gears a little bit. We really think of our department in three main focus areas: planning, community development, and economic development. With that said, most of the projects and programs that we undertake cross through all of those various service areas. Our planning staff is responsible for technical assistance and staffing multiple boards, currently coordinating a comprehensive plan update, and assisting with environmental compliance for other projects within the city. Right now, board support represents a significant time commitment. At the present, staff is coordinating the review of 6 or 7 applications before the planning board. These include projects associated with Canandaigua National Bank, Builder's Choice. There's a project for new apartments downtown, Town Place Suites, a Chick-fil-A, Auburn Community Hospital. We have kind of in this, I feel sometimes like it's boom or bust, and right now we're in a boom of potential development projects within the city. The planning office, and really my entire team, has played a role in securing and administering grants that benefit the city. This includes the Community Development Block Grant, the Department of State Smart Growth Planning Grant, which is assisting with the development of our comprehensive plan, and the vacant rental program. Additionally, we do take on project administration for what I'm going to call smaller projects, because it's not a $95 or $99 million project, but nonetheless, Wall Street Park is a project that requires project administration. And just to kind of highlight this a little bit, due to timing constraints on funding availability, a lot of times these parks aren't something we can just take on all at once. We have to phase them in. That phasing ends in additional complexities, additional resources needed for project and grant administration. I'm highlighting this one specifically because we are nearing the completion of it, and we have a couple items left to finish. One of the major items is the installation of the pavilion. This pavilion we've sent out for bid for installation. The numbers came back in a little higher than we'd like them to be at. So we have engaged with the Department of Public Works, looking for assistance in the installation of this. While this isn't common, because this is a comprehensive park improvement, we are able to actually use CDBG dollars to cover city costs associated with this installation. So if it's something that we can work through, we're going to use our local forces to get this done and use CDBG to reimburse the city for the costs of that. Mentioning community development, we have seen a slight decline in our annual allocation from the federal government for CDBG. We recently found out that we are authorized or allocated $108,000. The good news is that although while we've seen a slight decrease in overall funding, we are still able to reimburse up to the $125,000 in salaries and associated costs with the program administration.
Mr. Selvik, on CDBG, great program. It's done tremendous good across this city over a couple decades now. Right?
50 years.
50 years, okay. Several decades. While there's been a slight decrease, the funding has been fairly consistent. Word out of Washington is that the current administration is going to propose, once again, cutting this program in its entirety. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully Congress pushes back like they have in the past. But I think it's an example, again, of how important federal and state funding is to any city. $125,000 of that goes to pay salaries within this organization, correct?
That is correct.
Right. I just wanted to be on record with that. Thank you.
That is correct. To your point, Mayor, this particular program in the 20 years I've been here has been targeted for elimination several times. The fact remains that this program does good work in communities throughout the U.S., and so there tends to be broad support for maintaining the accomplishments that are a result of the CDBG program. Also, with regards to our ability to secure funding to reimburse our salaries, we've also been concerned with potential cuts and eliminations of programs, and staff has been proactive in seeking other funding sources. And that's really why we went after, in partnership with the Auburn Housing Development Corporation, that cross-mod program for housing, the vacant rental program, as well as working with our state partners through DOS for the comprehensive plan. Moving over to economic development, the lack of a dedicated economic development professional in our office has, my panel's gonna die. I'm gonna fix that before it goes. I wanna make sure council can see my numbers. Although we lack a dedicated economic development professional to pursue initiatives in a proactive manner, we still have continued to do what we can to stay involved locally. Staff serves on and participates with the County Site Selection Committee and the Housing Committee. These two committees are ad hoc committees that are really a spin-up related to the initial discussion around Micron, but we've kept them going so that we can keep open communication between the city and county partners about both potential sites as well as housing. The other item that we regularly attend is the Central New York Regional Economic Development Council meetings. This is really important that we're able to kind of understand what's happening in the region. I mentioned staffing a little bit. Our current staffing consists of a director, community development program manager, and 2 senior planners. In the current fiscal year, a deputy director position was authorized. However, again, given the fiscal constraints, we've been unable to fill that particular position. I don't anticipate being able to fill that position going forward either. I'm asking that we maintain our existing positions, and one of the things that I've done in the budget is I've looked for funding to support economic development on or in a different fashion by supporting a local agency who can dedicate time and effort specifically around economic development. So with that, I'll just point real quick to the planning budget. You'll see here that there is actually a slight decrease in the salaries. However, there is an increase in our operating expenses, and again, this is related to a desire to enable proactive economic development in our community and work with a partner agency that can help us see this through. They have the expertise in it, as well as honestly the capacity to help us with it.
So if I can, I just want to speak into that piece. There's been a lot of discussion throughout the budget around how do we attract additional revenue to our community. This agency support is one investment, a fairly small investment, in proactively going to that next step in trying to grow our tax base, trying to grow our economy. That's something that, as Steve mentioned, with the vacant position, they have not had the capacity to do that. He and I and others have been involved in trying to do good work still and responding to businesses, but that proactive work and getting out there, we haven't been able to do that. And there's so much opportunity right now. So this investment, in my opinion, and Steve's, would be important.
So with that said, I'll turn gears a little bit and talk about my 8% and 11% reductions. And one of those reductions ultimately would be cutting that potential support for economic development. Unfortunately, what this would do is put us in a status quo position that we're in right now of doing our best to respond to inquiries, but not really having the expertise and the proactive approach to it that I would like to see. Additional to that, there's some software reductions in software expenses that would help us get to that 8% mark. To meet the 11% reduction scenario, in addition to that, it would also include removing the CDBG intern position. We typically have someone with us over the summer that helps significantly with grant compliance and administration around monitoring requirements that are fairly time consuming, but once our intern's up to speed, they're able to run with it, and we've been lucky enough to have our intern come back year after year after year. That helps us out. So that would be lost in the 11% reduction scenario. There would also be additional cuts to software expenses, as well as removal of any technical assistance for our boards and training. I would like to close on a good note and highlight what I see as our goals going forward for planning and code enforcement in the upcoming fiscal year. This includes our desire to complete the comprehensive plan update and housing market study, complete the Wall Street Park upgrade, initiate the College Place Park community engagement and design. That would be our first step in that particular park. We'll be seeking funding for Pomeroy Park improvements and initiating the housing code review and revisions. With that, I would love to answer any questions that council may have.
Does anybody have any additional questions?
I just have one. Is it possible maybe that the Employment Development Office, and I know I'm renaming it, on Grand Ave, would they be interested in maybe funding that intern position, or are they just specific to certain ages?
I think that their desire typically is they work for full-time permanent placement more than on a temporary basis, and this really is one of those situations where we've taken in the past someone that's interested in planning or community development, typically a graduating high school senior or a college student, to really give them a little bit of exposure while they're providing a service to the city.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Mr. Selvig. Up next, we have Corporation Counsel Nate Garland with his 2026-2027 budget presentation. Mr. Garland?
but a simple caveman lawyer. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will attempt to be short and sweet. Our department is relatively small. As you can see, the total budget request is the top line item there, $474,187. That essentially is entirely salary and benefits, and we'll go through line items in my presentation. Now, here's what our office does. I have one boss, that's Ms. Haynes. She has one boss, that's the City Council, but I have one client, and that is a municipal corporation that is the City of Auburn. And that client requires me and the people in my office to do all the things that are listed here. And I can tell you, in the years that I've practiced law, it's by far the best client I've had and the most rewarding practice of law. But it is, it takes on various issues, and sometimes that requires us to think on our feet and become experts on law in a very short amount of time. And I would put forth to the council that that's something we have a pretty good record of doing. So what do? We are governed by the laws of the state of New York. You can see them scrolling there. Cannabis law, and we've discussed that a little bit this evening. It's a good example of how our office is nimble, thanks to the support of the city manager and council. Of course, the cannabis law was not in existence several years ago. We had to shepherd the city council through a decision that was made to either opt in or opt out of retail cannabis sales, and then help city staff, the police department, the code enforcement office, work with the licensure of retail cannabis stores, and continuing through the permitting and zoning process into what we did today, amending the local zoning ordinance that deals with cannabis sales. So that's kind of a soup to nuts example of how our office interacts with a particular law of the state of New York. We also, of course, are knowledgeable, I would say experts on the city charter. The city charter is essentially analogous to the United States Constitution, in that it enumerates what powers are given to the city of Auburn. And the municipal code is analogous to legislation. It is legislation. It's analogous to laws that Congress passes. These are areas in which this municipal corporation that is the city of Auburn and all its constituent departments and staff interact with the public. So in its capacity as property owners and people. So here's an oldie but a goodie that you are not allowed to sweep rubbish on beat rugs on the city of Auburn right away. So it's something that I kind of highlight as I don't know. I found it. It's obviously it's anachronistic, but it was a problem at one point in time when people polluted their neighborhoods by beating rugs in public, and it's something that the city council found necessary to address through legislation. So our office back then, and continues to be the case now, would be the entity where something like that gets started. Who are we? Well, there's myself, Corporation Counsel, Assistant Corporation Counsel Tim Brennan, and our paralegal is Rosemary Taylor. Tim's in his 17th year of the practice of law. Rosemary has worked for the city for 17 years and has been a paralegal in several locations in the United States of America and in Canada. Here is the budget. As you can see there, the bottom, I'll direct your attention to the bottom right page. There's that 474,187. That is the full amount. The top and requested is the 329,565. The difference in those two numbers is essentially the health insurance and other retirement benefits that, as the council has been made aware, the comptroller has requested that those expenditures go back into the departments. So the there's a lot of zeros on there, and we're very happy to comply with Ms. Leeson's recommendations. The probably the most notable zero is the Human Rights Commission grant. That was housed within my office's budget. There's no particular reason why it should be housed within my office's budget. It is human rights commissions are a creation of state law and are authorized by the City Council of the City of Auburn. So we have pushed that out of the Corporation Council's office's budget to perhaps that's passing the buck, but it is frankly a decision that's above my pay grade. So we took it out of my budget. There are various services.
Just a quick note, that has not been zeroed out of the city budget.
Yeah, thank you, Manager.
Yeah.
Yes, I was inarticulate in explaining that. There's some services listed there. Arbitration, we've had some arbitration expenses in the past couple of years, and the comptroller's indicated that $3,000 is a reasonable number to budget there. We shall see how this year goes. There's the Thomson Reuters is our Westlaw subscription. Consulting fees, I think that is an extremely conservative number to budget, but there are certain areas of law where we're just not expert enough and we need to go out of house. A good example of that is we had some interaction with disability and retirement in a particular department where we had to go out of house for expert consultation, and fingers crossed that consultation I think will result in significant long-term savings for the city. So that is the final line there is travel, training, and professional development. That number is essentially the law license fee for myself and Mr. Brennan that the city typically picks up. So proposed reductions in consultation with the comptroller, or a 3-person department. We don't have a lot to cut, and unfortunately the proposed cuts are to the Assistant Corporation Counsel in the number of hours that he works, and his salary would be reduced accordingly. So that's fairly self-evident. The 8 and 11% savings there are indicated by 60 and 70% cuts, or 60 or 70% of the compensation for Mr. Brennan. And in red, you see that would be his salary after cuts. And I don't want to be melodramatic here. I will say that Mr. Brennan is as good of a lawyer as I've ever had the pleasure of practicing with, and it is quite the deal for the city at the current salary that he gets paid. I'm sure if he was standing here, he would tell you that he's fairly compensated, and would perhaps be a little bit embarrassed by me saying this, but city gets a tremendous amount of value for his effort. And this is unfortunately where we are, though. Lawyers are, by nature and by training, objective to the point of being sociopaths sometimes. And Mr. Brennan and I have talked about this. He understands that this might be an outcome for the budgeting process. And he's been frank with me that he would have to consider whether or not he would be able to continue to work for the city under these cuts. So that's where we are. Any questions? Yeah. Councilor Diego.
Would it maybe be a better move to cut Rosemary to part-time and keep keep Tim on full-time?
That was discussed within our department. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Taylor, and myself, and this was the option that we came up with.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you, Mr. Gerlin.
Thank you.
Up next, Department of Public Works budget presentation for fiscal year 2026-2027. Mr. Talbot, Superintendent of Public Works, welcome.
All right, thanks. I just gotta oil up my old stiff body here. So, I always represent our department a little differently. I think simply because it makes more sense to me. So what you're gonna see here is line graphs, all right? And first we'll go into a little background here. You know, similar to probably what everyone's used to seeing for Public Works when we get to this time of year. You know, we're a diverse department. There's very little we're not involved with. Everyone sits here and enjoys the scrolling slideshow before the meetings start. And, you know, 90% of those images are Public Works related. A lot of that work comes through Kim Basso's office, and it's a thankless job. She has to put up with a lot of stuff from people, and it's a very difficult job to organize all that, and we're lucky that we have somebody that can navigate through it. So I saw Kim earlier. I don't know if she's still here. I appreciate all you do. I know it's not easy, because back in the day I did it. So one of the original departments, I think, for the city, I know years ago I was leafing through something in the manager's office, and there was a reference to some bulletin or something in the late 1800s, but in the 1890s, I believe, where I had to get a wagon to pull a tree out of the way off one of the roads coming into town, and you can just imagine it was a Public Works person doing that probably. Probably didn't know he was a Public Works person, him or her, but we know they are now. Entire department is a good example of interdepartmental cooperation. So I think our department has probably the most different job titles. And you can see where it can get confusing when you try to manage all this. So those are all the different cost centers, and actually all these cost centers, they're left standing here. That's after combining and kind of eliminating some departments over the last 20 years. Cost centers, I should say. So, and what we're going to talk about first is the general fund, because Public Works is involved with not only the general fund, the solid waste fund as usual, but a new fund that is created this upcoming budget year, our recreation fund. So we'll go with that. That's something new for everybody, so we'll go into that. This is a listing of the positions, and remember, the proposed budget we're proposing now is the same budget we're living in right now. We didn't ask for anything more. We didn't ask for, well, we probably asked for a little bit less in some of our line items. So I know some of the other departments included their benefits in with the budget this year. To me, I think it makes more sense to me. I removed them, and I do list the benefits, so it's easier for me to understand how much it costs for every one of our services that we do. You know, then once again, this is the general fund we're going to talk about first. So you can see, you know, I won't go through them all. We all know what we do. This is our solid waste fund. So there's 3 accounts in that. All right, and this is the line graphs I'm talking about. So, and there's a couple slides per department, if you want to call it, or cost center. Now, when we look at these line graphs, what I wanted to illustrate is how tight budgets have Public Works written all over it. Our budget's always tight. Tight budgets don't intimidate us. They don't make us cower. You know, it really forces us to be creative and really collaborate amongst each other when we're trying to organize things and get things done. So with that being said, it's just, I guess, ironic that The color I chose, blue, just happens to be the color a lot of people are wearing in here that makes these line graphs make sense. In other words, you'll see we do a lot with very little, and that's a testament to my peers who are here tonight in support of each other and in support of the city. I mean, it's great to see people take part in the process. It's not an easy process at times, especially this one, but we're all looking at the same thing. So with that being said, also, we have a secret weapon that really makes these line graphs go, and that's Sarah Gauthier, who nothing gets by her. So we have very tight constraints on what we spend. You know, Sarah is the key to all that. She's the key to a lot of things in our department, just like Justin and Rich are really the only 2 or 3, and myself included, who really can spend or are authorized to spend. So this is our buildings account, and this is what I was talking about. If you look at the last bullet in each one, that's the estimated benefits for the upcoming year. The reason I removed them out of the actual budget request is because it would throw off those line graphs, because those are all without budgets, or I mean without benefits. So that's our buildings. That covers pretty much here, helps out at the Heritage Center, helps out a little bit everywhere. See our largest expenses, janitorial supplies, elevator repair. Public Works Garage, those are our mechanics. Like I said, we have a head mechanic, Rich. He's was appointed there, I believe, in July. I don't know if Rich is here. I think I saw him earlier, but you know, we can't say enough about Rich. He's tight as a drum and frugal and creative, and just really watches all of our nickels. So it's much appreciated. It's not an easy job. We service all the police vehicles, all of our heavy equipment, really any piece of equipment in the city's possession, and most vehicles come through our garage down there. And there's the numbers. So it makes sense to me to look at it this way. And I know, you know, I like to try to keep things simple. It's a garage. We have mechanics, we buy solvents, we buy shop materials out of this, and the benefits to operate with 3 mechanics, that's what it is. Please, if anyone has any questions, please ask as we go along. I know there's a lot of different departments, and it's been a long night, but I'll stay here as long as we have to, and we'll get it straight. This one right here, signal maintenance and street lighting, you can see the spike up there, and that's simply for the increase in electricity for all of our street lights. So this position right here, we have 1 person in this. He's currently on medical leave.
Can you go back?
I'm sorry?
Can you go back to that? So that's the entire budget for that department? That
Yes.
amount isn't the streetlights alone?
Yep.
That's the entire budget for that department?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And most of it is NICEAG. I think for this coming year, I think it's close to $525,000 or something.
Just for streetlights?
Streetlights, yeah. So, and there's one, oh, I'm sorry.
Question?
I have a question about streetlights. This might be something we discuss later, but I've been reading about some municipalities actually switching to red lights. They cost less to actually use, and there's some evidence that it actually helps with national levels and don't use as much. But I'm just curious if that's something we could look at to see if that's actually
Like red lights instead of?
Yeah, instead of the white light. I don't know how much of that is true. It's just something I've read.
I don't know. That's the first I've heard of it. But we're, you know, the only problem with that is if we were to redo everything, there's an initial cost that would probably be high. But everything's doable, I think, you know. But like I said, we have 1 person in this department. He's currently on medical leave, so we're hopeful he's back in action soon. So if you see a couple lights that are out, we're aware of them and we'll get to them. So. Public Works Administration, that's, there's really 3 of us, myself, Kim and Sarah. You can see the drop down there, that's because of a pending retirement, which is me. So that's what that is. And obviously that cost saving is tied into my retirement. So, and the benefits to run the admin part. And once again, if anyone has any questions, just please ask. street department. This is one of our larger departments, and I know we still have street department, parks department, forestry, but we all work together. Sometimes street people are in the parks, sometimes the parks people are on the streets, so it's interchangeable. I wouldn't recommend ever combining them because I think it would be too big to manage at times. Might make some sense sometimes, but I think as far as being what we do in the mornings to get everybody out, it's much easier to track costs, I believe, this way. So, and that's the list of people there. And, you know, the increase due to collective bargaining agreements, fuel costs, things like that. So in road paint, you know, road paint is really expensive now. To paint, I remember we just talked to Adam, and to do from James Street to Loop Road down near where Hunter's Diner still sits, I believe it, for just white, that's not even the yellow, was close to, I think, $4,000 or $5,000. You can see how quickly that gets into, can eat your lunch pretty quickly. And with how tight our current budget is and the one upcoming, you know, we'll do our best to get everything nice and bright, but we are going to have some limitations. Snow removal, we all know what this is. Increase in fuel, anticipated increase in salt cost. That doesn't come out until August, so we'll see. We're anticipating an increase, but with that anticipation, we also have our salt barn about 40% full right now. So they're calling for an inch, you know, an inch to 2 inches south of us on Monday, so we'll be ready if it comes this side. But that's our budget for snow removal. I know we were charged with trying to figure out how to plow snow more cheaply or more efficiently, and I think we did that this year. There's really only one way to do that, and that's to use less salt or to use less plows. So I think we managed it pretty well. Once again, the operators and everything did their jobs, and you know, we'll just deal. The expectations for plowing for a city of this size are varied. You know, some people understand the challenges we face, and some people just either don't or refuse to acknowledge that, and we can't be everywhere. We can't catch snow as it falls. You have to let it fall so we can plow it. So, anyone have any questions?
Yep. When you put your budget together and because you said fuel a few times,
Mm-hmm.
did you take into, or did you add, not take into account, this is a better way to ask, did you add a little more for fuel given what we're experiencing nationally and worldwide?
Yeah, but you know, it's funny you bring that up, Counselor, and I think that's a good question because, you know, coming from private sector before I came here, you have economic factors, if you want to call them that. So you can raise your price. If your fuel goes up, you hit everyone with a fuel surcharge. You know, if your flour goes up, you charge more for bread. We try to make those adjustments, and we're accused of being inefficient, not by you folks, but by the general public. So it's a tough situation to be in. We do our best to forecast. We look at previous years, and you know, we do our best. But to answer your question, yes, we did. You know, hopefully it's enough. You know, you don't know that until you're in it. So, and just so everyone knows, the salt did go. It was $49.67 a ton this year. And remember the issues we had last year of supply. You know, it was $60 a ton then. So, you know, that's your basic supply and demand model. You know, if it's a light snow, it's cheaper the following year. If it's a very busy snow, it's more expensive the next year. So, municipal parking, that's what really is the parking garage for us. Now, Public Works, we've always been kind of a catch-all for fragmented departments, or if services are no longer offered. It seems like we have been in the past a catch-all. Not complaining about it, but it takes us a little bit a learning curve to do all this. This is really pertaining to the parking garage. We work closely with the police department on the actual parking system. We don't get involved with the meters. We do remove them and install them,
But as far as servicing them, collecting money will help out if we have to, but really for us, municipal parking is the parking garage and the maintenance of that. So we have one person over there. And in the budget for this year, you know, we have a full-time labor over there. So that's, remember, this is our proposed budget right now for the general fund. Parks Department, another one of our big departments, just like the streets, you know, a lot of employees, so you can see once again, keep in mind the blue line. It's not me making this happen, it's all of our people, all my peers that are here tonight, even the ones that aren't here tonight, they all have a hand in watching our costs, and I'll tell you what, you know, Public Works, the guys continue to exceed expectations to get the job done, and it seems like we have fewer and fewer assets every year. So, and that's our Parks Department budget. Now, what I failed to recognize at the beginning of this, so this current budget we're in, you know, we've already been participating, and I'm just going to leave it at that. We have a laborer's position that currently is not filled in the Parks Department, and one of our truck driver's position was only funded for half a year. With that being said, well, we get it. Times are tough, you know. You get your most creative when you have to, but we're really at a point for Public Works where it's been going on a lot of years of kind of getting, you know, gigged a little bit each year. So we're almost at critical mass right now. I would say critical mass as far as staffing. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go. But you can see the cost. I know it's been discussed here on everyone's, the cost we can't control. Like for our Parks Department, the benefits package there is $357,000. You know, our folks are worth every penny of that, but that's what it costs. And I know that's the challenge we all face. And we'll see what we can come up with. Special events, like I said, the scrolling images you see at the beginning is all having to do with our special events. Community get-togethers, anything you can think of. Downtown, at the parks, Falcon Park, it really doesn't matter. Movies and bands, Founders Day. Well, I think it's rebranded to Summer Homecoming, is that right? So, and Memorial Day Parade.
One quick question on that, Mike.
Yes.
That's something that obviously you don't want to just cut out every single thing in the city that you can. We're in a tough position, but we also got to look at when we start putting money aside for special events, stuff like that. It's something that's going to have to take a real close look, being that when you start talking about proposing cutting people's jobs, I think the employment of people takes priority over special events. Personal opinion, obviously, but it's something, you know, to preserve the services and people's employment is a priority.
No, I'm obviously in agreement with that, and I'll tell you, Kim started a donor, you know, for contributions to sponsor movies, she's done an excellent job contacting the right people. So, you know, Counselor, it might be a point where we have to base our, and it's going to be hard for her to schedule it, base our special events on what kind of donations we get.
Absolutely.
So, you know, but she's on top of it. She has the package each year, and I'll tell you, you know, Auburn's a tough town, you know, but it is a giving town. It can be, you know, and that's why I know all of you there are held to task pretty, you know, the mob is tough at times, you know, just like it is for us. And with that being said, at times though, you know, I think they can appreciate what is provided for them here. So, and we do provide a lot of services, you can see. You know, one of my nephews wrote his first book. He's out in LA trying to break into the scene, and in his book, he sent it to me as a proof. And one of the characters in there is named Public Works Ronnie. And what the book is about, he said it was inspired by COVID and the shut-ins. What the book is about is this fictitious town, so even in fiction, this is how Public Works comes through. The sun doesn't shine one day, so they have to figure out how to keep people's cycles together. So anyway, they build this network of lights, and whenever anyone had a problem, they'd go to the mayor, I think they called them town elders or something, and it was always, well, you got to go find Public Works Ronnie. That's it, you know, he'll take care of you. go to the police department. That's not me. You got to go see Public Works Ronnie. Well, look out here. Public Works Ronnie is all around us right here, and what they do every day is it's fun to work with. It's a privilege, really. You know.
I just want to speak into one thing. Mike actually had reached out to me to ask me about the Memorial Day Parade and whether he should plan for that. So I just want to say I made the decision to tell him, yes, you should plan for that, and that was solely based on the feedback from the holiday parade earlier, or at the end of last year. So, but absolutely, we want to do everything we can to preserve services and jobs first. But at the moment, that's why that was still in there. And he did reach out to me about that.
So Public Works Ronnie will be at the parade. So urban forestry, this one here, and you know, our Rich was our previous tree trimmer. He went to the head mechanic's job. You know, to our workforce, I'll take the hit for not having that position filled yet. But these are some of the tough decisions we have to make right now. So to save a few bucks in this current budget, the tree trimmer's position is not filled right now, but it is in the upcoming budget.
Are we still contracting out with like Cranebrook and paying them to do the job?
Only,
with the vacant
only in
position?
emergencies. I'll tell you what, you know, our forestry, our program works. We got rid of all the ash trees. There's a slew of silver maples that were failing. The Norway maples are failing. So, but Rich and his motivation and his direction, we were able to buy ourselves some time.
Right, I just don't want to be paying out an extreme amount of money on the side if it ends up being that it would be cheaper just to fill the
No.
laborer spot.
Well, and that's where I guess my position gets tough. You have to make those calls, and right now it seems like it's the right call. Tomorrow might be the wrong call. We'll see. You know, and I'll take it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, on that position, a valuable position that needs to stay for the time being until that position is filled. This might be a question for Ms. Selvig. We have the grant money for the urban forestry from the Department of the federal government. Could that at least, it's only 2 more years left of funding, until we get that position filled, could that help pay so we can keep up with the kinds of tree trimming that needs to happen until that position is filled? Could we use that funding in the meantime?
Hello, Mayor and Council again. Yes, we can. So today, actually, your question's very timely, and with everything going on at the federal government, it appears that maybe the USDA and Forest Service are going to be reorganizing. And so I was told this would not affect our USDA IRA funding, but that is something always to just be leery of and cautious of. So we do have a current open PO with Cranebrook that is paid for in full through the urban forestry grant that we have, and can be renewed again. I think it's about $100,000 annually that we're able to apply for services to that grant.
And obviously, it's better to have a full-time employee in that position, but once that position is filled, that would, but until that position is filled, this will help make sure that the important forestry work within the city needs to continue.
Yes.
And this is, again, like the federal money that we've worked hard to bring those funds back to the city, allow us to do that. But obviously, the position needs to be filled.
Yeah.
Can that money be used to fill the position?
We can use the tree trimmer position as match in the grant, and there is actually staff time that's eligible in the grant. I can get more detail to council at a, in the near future. If that
Appreciate
would
it.
work. Okay,
That's
great.
the first grant I've ever heard that would pay for a position. So that is a possibility?
We actually have several funds that we use to match city staff right now. So
I guess it doesn't hurt to ask, so thank
Yes.
you,
So-
Councilor.
Stick
Yep,
with me,
I'll get
Terry.
you-
I'll get you there, man.
I've never heard of a position that's
I'll get
paid
you
by-
more
that's
information.
great.
This one is very unique. It's IRA monies. So yes,
Oh,
it
great.
was
Yeah, well,
originally,
nice.
yep, approved.
I just
for-
assumed we wouldn't get,
for funding
yeah.
for our tree.
The sooner it's filled, the
Yep,
better.
for our urban forester. So,
Great. That's
yep,
great.
definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. And we have used that grant, Counselor. I mean, we had to have Cranebrook come in. We had a couple of big leads on some stress trees, so they've been in. But the one of the things with the grant, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, it has to be used in specific areas of the city. It doesn't cover the city 100%. So what we hired Cranebrook to do just now didn't come out of our operating budget. It came out of that grant, and that's totally legitimate because it was in the right area of town. So.
Great.
Cemetery maintenance. And so here, I know I want to just mention a couple things on this. So I know this was a topic of discussion a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, and I want to apologize to my coworker Brett for not being here that night so I could help explain a little bit what we do at the cemetery. And I know the question came up about overtime. So, and like I assured Brett, it was not a critique of him. I think that was more a critique of how I decide to staff it. So I'd like to explain that a little bit. You couldn't ask for a more dedicated person than Brett out there. Sorry, Brett, I saw you earlier. I don't know if you're still here, but I'd hate to call you out like this, but you know, everyone needs to know your dedication. So in the kind of the 20 years now, 16 as superintendent, I've been involved with the cemetery. We've tried every different iteration to staff this. We've had 2 full-timers, we've had part-timers, we've had seasonal, we've had one of each. Nobody will send 3 up on a Tuesday and nothing works. You have to have somebody there, and I know it probably doesn't make sense, but one person has to be responsible for it out there. The problem we ran into is when you have 2 people, there's some assumptions made, that person's gonna do it, I'll do this, and then it doesn't get done. So one person being responsible for the site is the most efficient way to do it. Not only is it numbers-wise it works, but in there, you know, are Saturday burials. People, you know, it's not convenient sometimes when people pass, there's people out of town, and the only time they can get there is on a weekend, either A, to purchase a grave, or B, have the funeral itself. So we have to be there at that. We do have overtime built into this position. You know, we have got nothing but, since I changed how we staff it out there to one person, it's just run much more efficiently. The job isn't all mowing. There's 26 acres out there. There's over 7,000 headstones. Certain areas of the cemetery can't be mowed with a mower. You have to hand mow them because they're wet. So it takes a lot, and if you don't know the site, you can get in trouble real fast. So, but this also covers North, remember we own North Street Cemetery also. So I know there's no burials that go on there, but we do have to maintain it. Do I wish we did, you know, could do more out there? Absolutely. But that's a tough spot right there, North Street Cemetery, because literally there's pine, they're buried in pine boxes out there. And we all know that wood deteriorates, so we have to be real careful about what equipment we have out there, because all of a sudden you're ending up in the ground with somebody, you know, so we have to be very careful. That's a lot of hand work, a lot of footwork. So does anyone have any question about the cemetery? I apologize, Brett, that I wasn't here that night to explain a little bit more, and I hope it's a little bit more clear on why we do what we do out there. So.
Real quick, Mike, what's the built-in overtime on that job?
It's 1 hour a day. He works 6 to 3. And, you know, it's a busy week. You know, one of those jobs too, and it's, I guess when those jobs come open, we have to assign somebody to it. Everybody thinks they want it until they think, man, if I don't get the weed eating done, there's only one person that can be blamed. You know, if no one's not done, if a burial goes awry. And remember, that was gifted to the city back in the, I think, 1920s.
So one of the challenges we face is when they started burying people out there, and there's, early 1800s, I believe, you know, they did what they did. So now here we are in 2026, and for our plots, and once again, this is where Kim and Brett and Justin was out there for years, put their heads together. Sometimes we'll open up a space, there's supposed to be nothing there, and oops, somebody there. You know, because if you're off 6 inches, 500 feet that way, and you're going this, that 6 inches turns into 10 feet by that end. And it's no fault of ours, that's just how they did it back in the day. So it's tough. It is tough out there.
Mr. Talbot, on that topic, let's just address the elephant in the room. I'm the one that asked the question that night, because I was a little shocked by what I saw. And it wasn't meant to be disrespectful to any employee. I worked with you for the last 11 years. I think you know that's never my intention.
No.
So if it was perceived that way, I apologize. But it's been said over and over the last few weeks that we have the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the city is doing what it's supposed to do. So I really was just asking a question in that responsibility, right? In that role of being responsible for that. So again, if it was taken as me being disrespectful to an employee, I apologize for that.
No, you know, and I'm glad the question was asked, because if I'd known the question was asked, I would have been here. But I'm able to answer it now. So hopefully everyone is a little more comfortable with why we do what we do up there. It's really the only way to get it done. I know it sounds crazy, less people, but in this situation it does. Of course, if it's the right person. So that is it for the general fund. There's a couple things I'd like to say, but let's get through this and then we'll, I know it's a long night. So refuse collection. So this also includes recycling. So that's it right there. The increase is due to, you know, collective bargaining agreement, fuel increases, supply costs, maintenance and repairs. Thanks for Mayor and Council for supporting some of our equipment purchases. We have 2 Packers that are due, I believe, by the end of May. It's been a long time coming. So, like I always say, this is the only department that visits every house in the city every week of every year. So, this is refuse disposal. This used to be our landfill account when we had a landfill. But I know, Councilor Jay, you asked some questions on the payments from the solid waste fund going back. We still have responsibility for the closed landfill 1 and the closed landfill 2. So this is what this is for. It's quarterly reporting. Down there, there's 5 annual reports that have to get done. I currently do those. I'm showing Jeremy how to do them. But there's also quarterly reporting where you're compare and contrast the 63 groundwater wells we have down there with past data. So consultants do that because the reports are about that thick, and they're due every quarter to the state. So does anyone have any questions on that? That is what that refuse disposal is. It's a remnant of when we had the landfill, but it's still landfill related, so we left it in. And this is the transfer station. Costs obviously are, you know, some of our CVA and fuel costs. Largest expenses are landfill tipping fees, facility operations, fuel. And you can see once again I separated out the benefits. So now this is the new fund, and Mary Beth, you want to jump on the other side? So this is going to be new for us, the Enterprise Recreation Fund, which was, and I'll let her speak to this, but the auditors kind of directed us that this is the proper thing to do for these 2.
So basically, the audit recommended that these are really more like a business operation and we should treat them as such. So enterprise fund is how you do that. So in the past couple of weeks, we have the preliminary requested budget from Mr. Talbot. We've been working through that to kind of break those budgets down a little bit further. So if we think about Casey Park, I'm kind of thinking about it in 3 functions. There's the pool, there's ice, and then there's the regular park. The goal would be for ice, what we've been trying to do is figure out the proper allocation of staff, utilities, etc., how long we're going to keep ICE open, and how many hours we can actually rent it, to try to come up with an hourly rate that actually covers the cost to the city, so that would be a break even. So in an enterprise fund, you have to be break even. The pool is a challenge. I threw a couple ideas at the city manager today, so we'll see what we can do there. And then the park is really a city park, so the city general fund will contribute to the enterprise fund to cover the cost of the park. On the Falcon Park side, there's debt associated with Falcon Park that had to be moved over. So we've done that, and then basically, again, we're trying to figure out how to charge the entities that use that facility to offset our cost. Again, the general fund does need to, in my opinion, make a contribution to that fund because of the debt. There was that debt, if I try to charge that to entities using the facility, nobody's going to rent it. We're going to end up, pushing people away with the hourly rate. So the hope is, I did some refining of the budget and staffing plans so we can allocate costs. And then once we have those numbers and can talk to our partners that we would rent with to come back with something that looks like a balanced budget for that fund.
So this is the line graph for Casey since 2020. You can see fairly flat. I think the spike in 24 was a retirement, and everything else is there. Of course, energy costs are reflected in this also, and every other expense. So largest expenses out of Casey, and this is once again before the enterprise fund. So this would come out of the chlorine, the summer aquatics contract would come out of the portion that's pool related. There's park related and rink related, like Mary Beth said. So it'll be new for the city. It's probably the right thing to do. It'll take us probably a good 6 months to really dial in on some things, but it's the right thing to do. Any questions on that? Yes.
Yeah, speaking like what Mary Beth said, when you're talking about the enterprise fund, basically what you're saying is you can't charge less than it's costing us to run it.
Correct.
So it's kind of, and obviously there'll be people that won't be happy about it, but you can't charge per se $225 an hour for the ice rink if it's costing us $400. You're going to have to adjust the fee schedules, or something's got to change. We just can't continue to lose money and continue. I think the mayor's said it before, something along the lines of, you try to help everybody, but in the situation we're in, and I'm going to go back to this until this budget is passed, when you start talking about taking people's jobs, then we're going to make an adjustment someplace else. As far as you can't just give things away and hope that we can use the money to cover it. Like I said, the general fund balance is very low as it is. We're in a very tough position. It's not going to get any better next year. We've already established that. So we're just going to have to make the adjustments to these places, unfortunately, and that's just the way it's going to have to be.
Ms. Leeson, when an auditor makes a comment like that and gives corrective action advice, if a municipality doesn't follow that advice, what are the ramifications of that, or potential ramifications of that?
So potentially, if we don't follow the advice, then they could escalate their comment. Like the comment that they gave to us was a recommendation. It could be considered a material weakness. That kind of thing would affect our bond rating. It would affect New York State Comptroller looking at us in a different way. So it can ultimately affect funding.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, and that's, I think it's pretty cut and dry, what you were just saying, and that goes with the entire budget, I guess we could speak on. If it costs $500, you can't charge $300. If, your budget's $50 million, or you have $50 million, you can't spend $55 million. It's just that plain and simple. The cuts have got to be made as far as to other things before we get to the services, employees, and stuff along that lines. And there's ways to do it.
I agree, and this is ice. Well, let's both the pool and the ice. We're not even close to breaking even on either one.
So we'll see how important it is to the community. I mean, when you take something away, I think you realize how important, if our people mobilize to feel that way. You know, I just think it's unfair, I think, to, like I think you were touching on, that, you know, some person who's never been to Casey Park or lives anywhere, like, you know, my mother, who, you know, she hasn't been to Casey Park in 40 years, you know, but she's subsidizing people from probably living outside the city coming in and playing youth hockey or playing high school, and, you know, it's, yeah, it has to, it is what it is. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trade-off. You're talking $181,000 for the pool. That's a free service. How many people's jobs is that?
Yeah.
In reality.
No, I understand.
Mr. Talbot, my first budget was 2016. You were obviously here. It was a different city manager at the time. Do you remember what his recommendation was for Casey Park?
When the what was?
What the city manager's recommendation was in terms of the ice rink in 2016?
Well, it was A, to sell it or close it, one or the other.
And what did the council do year after year after year?
Subsidized our losses down there.
Just wanted to be on record.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You know, and I think it's that tree out there that, you know, early in my career, they wanted to string me up and hang me out there simply because I brought forth the numbers. You know, the numbers, you know, I'm not a brain surgeon, but I can surely add. And the numbers don't balance. And they continually don't balance. There's other options for that park down there, and we're, you know, investigating a few of them. And we'll, you know, really we need community support on a lot of stuff. You know, it's about time for everyone to put some skin in the game, as they say. So, not just us. So this, like Mary Beth said, evaluation of the budget for Casey Park into 3 categories: pool, ice, and the park. Fund must be budget neutral. We just discussed that. Total cost of the pool, no revenue offset. Total cost of the ice, revenue from rentals. So you're talking, and really those, you know, those hourly rates may change also once we continue to auger in on what people want. So total cost of the park there, and that would be the transfer from the general fund. Is that correct, Mary Beth?
Correct.
So obviously our goal is to have that as little as possible. Should the general fund pitch in down there? Absolutely, it's a park. It's a city park down there. It's 45 acres in addition to the facility. So Falcon Park, this is the line graph there. You know, everyone's aware of how popular Falcon's getting and the contract we have with the the college. So this here, you know, you'll see a decrease in there for not backfilling Brian's position, as he's going to be standing here next year. Estimated benefits, long-term debt right there. What is it? Does that mean what we pay each year for?
Correct. So
that?
we've transferred that debt, and part of what the college pays for is their share of the debt, and then part of their payment is for rent. And like I mentioned earlier, we're looking to transfer from the general fund the other portion of the long-term debt payment.
How much does the college pay?
They pay about $20,000 a month.
And they've been a good partner with us. They have. Falcon Park, same. Our goal is budget neutral. Rate increases. Brian has already increased the rates. That's why him and I were looking at the radar. There's a JV baseball game that happened tonight. They moved it up to beat that line of storms that came through, so I hope they got it all in. Pretty self-explanatory. So we're going in the right direction. Now, what we were all tasked to do, requested budget, you know, eliminate a vacant labor in the Parks Department. I get it. It's nothing I willingly want to give up, but I would rather, you know, have the invisible man go out than somebody else. No backfill of director of recreation promotion. So we were all tasked with 8%. And once again, I've never had a budget where we talk about it in April and it ends up in June being the same thing that was first presented in April. So we'll see what happens. But when you're tasked with something like this, an 8% out of all our public works, roughly $450,000, this is what you run into. not only with these, but cuts in operating supplies, less mulch for the playgrounds, less decorative mulch for City Hall, all kinds of things get affected in this. 8%, those are some of the possible impacts. Like I said, reduce operating supplies, special events reduce to whatever donations cover, pool not open, which prevents additional general fund transfer to the new recreation fund. So reduce we started up a summer tennis program, whatever grants can cover, that'll do. No city-sponsored softball or basketball programs. We do have some interest from a group about softball, and I know, Councilor Diego, you've been integral in that, so those conversations are continuing. And once again, we're not saying there's no softball. There's just going to be no city-sponsored softball. And once again, this, if you remember back a few years, a similar scenario transpired with the rink, and I think they quickly figured out, wow, the city's not that bad after all. They do know what they're doing, because they only lasted for, I think, less than 3 years. And they figured out this is a lot harder than it looks. So we'll work well with these folks. I hope it goes well for them. But that's a tough one. Softball's a tough one. We don't charge, when we were sponsoring it, we didn't charge that much, but we did have a non-resident fee. And some of the people aren't residents, and they will fake their address just to save themselves $30. So, and teams after COVID, it never really gained traction again. And if you look around to a lot of other communities, they don't municipally sponsor it anymore. I know Brian has done a lot of research on this, contacted everyone out there. A lot of them have scenarios like we're going to have. People rent the fields from us, and they have their leagues. So, yes.
Yes, Mr. Talbot, is there a record of attendance for the Casey Park pool? Has there been attendance of how many people use it over the summer?
Yeah, there has, and that's the YMCA that does that. And I know one of the challenges we face, let's charge money. Well, all of a sudden now we got to pay a cashier to sit there and take money.
Yeah.
So we decided, when it was decided first to not charge residents, that was and that was a good decision at the time. Chlorine was a lot cheaper than it is now. More people were swimming, and it made sense. But the attendance is tracked by the YMCA to answer your question. Okay. Brian, you might have that information.
That was last summer. Okay. Do you think they might have numbers
Well, see, if I went swimming one day, and I go swimming the next day, I'm counted as two, when it's really just one person.
But I'm just saying, just general, anecdotal, the YMCA would have that information, because they've been running the program since we made it free, or even before we made it free.
And I know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I just thought of something. I know one thought is out there, hey, let's us hire the lifeguards. Let me tell you, that is the worst, because that used to be my job back a long time ago. And that was the worst 2 months of my life, because what happens is, it's such a finite season, and now it's even fewer people getting certified, but it's always that age group where maybe they think a week in advance if you're lucky, so they get out of college ready for their summer job, and none of the certifications occur. So all of a sudden now we got to have an emergency CPR and lifeguard class at a cost, and hopefully they stick the summer out. So it's a challenge, and that's why we hired the Y. They are the professionals, and we don't have to worry about that at all.
Yeah, that was my idea, and I've been speaking about it since January 8th, my first meeting, and the issue I had with it is, yeah, it could be a challenge to hire them, but we paid $51,700 for those lifeguards last year for 6 weeks, 42 hours a week. Even if you were paying them $20 an hour, give or take, I understand, I think the mayor spoke to me about there was some lessons and stuff involved, but you were still kicking back half that money to the YMCA after they were paid. That's a lot of money for lifeguards. You could go out and, I'm not saying you could, but hypothetically, we could be looking on the American Red Cross site in January, February, March, April, May, June, whatever it takes. $51,000 for lifeguards is obscene as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's a huge part of that budget, and they weren't paying them that much. Honestly, I spoke to the one person that was in charge of them, and it was kind of disappointing what they were paying them, because we were paying, it came down to $8,600 a week, $204 an hour, and we're paying these kids 17, 18 bucks an hour. That's a tough call for me.
As far as the breakdown, chlorine, you mentioned that the chlorine and maintenance of the pool. As far as the ratio goes, the $50,000 for the YMCA to basically run the program, what would that $50,000 compare to the actual pool maintenance and chlorine, et cetera? What would that ratio be?
Well, that contract said that we were responsible for all the maintenance and
Oh, yes,
chemicals
no, I know
ourselves.
that,
Yeah.
I know that. I'm just saying, like, I'm thinking of the pool to run it as a pool without the YMCA. Like, I wanted to see, like, what that ratio is.
And at a quick math here, so all of our expenses minus labor. So this
Yeah,
is
the $50,000
chlorine
Yeah,
was roughly $85,000.
So $85,000 for just the material, and then if you, how about city staff to maintain that, add that onto that?
That would be an
85.
additional $35,000.
So 85, 35, so 120,000 for the pool itself, and then 50,000 for the YMCA to run it.
If I can jump in a second,
Sure.
Counselor, that 120 includes the lifeguards.
Includes the lifeguards?
Includes
Okay.
the lifeguards.
Okay.
But our projection for this coming year is around the same, 120,000. So this past year, and this is, so the summer 2025, seems like a long time ago, but our most recent, we spent $21,000 in chlorine. That used to cost us for a season about $6,000. They're also feeling that pinch up at the water treatment plant. Chlorine costs a lot of money now. Lifeguards for the YMCA was $51,700. Electricity was $3,400. That's to run the pumps. What we do is look at when we turn the pool on and the electricity spikes. Mary Beth's good about tracking that. Water, evaporation, that's a big 50-meter pool. So if you have a sunny day, there's evaporation. So every morning we have to fill it back up to the gutters. So water was about $3,000. And then we had a chemical bulk storage charge this year. So that was the integrity test of our chlorine tank. It's good for 5 years. So that's included in this expense because it came out of this budget. If you really wanted to split hairs, you could divide that by 5, and throw it, and reduce that annual by $4,000. But I don't know why we'd want to do that because we paid for it.
Yeah. No.
So you're right. Lifeguards are a considerable expense, but they do also get the permit from the county. And like I said, it's time consuming. And what we can afford to pay, we can't compete with. And I'm not talking, because there's two different sorts of lifeguarding. There's pool and there's waterfront. Waterfront pays a little more. That's at your Emerson Park, that's at Green Lake State Park, where you have a beachfront. It's considered waterfront, I believe. Camp Waiwasco, it's a different certification. So that's one of the challenges we ran into back in the day is we're competing with everybody to hire the same core of people for the same amount of time. So of course, most of the kids go, who's going to pay more money?
Right, which is exactly going back to the point I was making. They weren't paying them basically a little bit over minimum wage, but we were paid $51,000 for them last year. That's my point. If you're paying them $25, $30 an hour, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this because the kickback, going back the extra money back to the YMCA wouldn't have been there, but obviously
Right.
it was.
Well, and one of the issues I've always had with the contract we've had with them is really, they bid this on a full pool with a lot of people in it. So you got to have at least 4 in the chair, you got to have 1 walking the deck, and you got to have at least 1 or 2 in the first aid room. So I'm sure when they put this budget together, they're assuming, all hands on deck all day long. That's probably not the case.
Yeah, I checked it out a few times last year, and weekends you couldn't even get near the pool, but basically Monday through Thursday, there wasn't that many people in there,
No.
unfortunately.
And it sounds crazy, but nobody swims in August, at least at a public pool. It's all in July. 95% of the attendance was in July. Nobody swims in August. It's the last month of summer, fall sports start, everybody's interest wane a little bit. Yes?
I guess that's what I was at least getting at with my question as far as attendance-wise. Is what kind of maintenance, I know we pulled back on the hours last year. Is that correct? Did we pull back on the time frame of the pool last year, or is it the same? Is that something that you could see?
Well, I think it's the same. It was noon to 6. What we pulled back on is we paid a little extra for, I don't remember what the name of the class was, something in the morning that they would staff, but our residents really weren't interested. So we ended that, and that was, so we asked not that to be included. So that reduced the price by, I think, $3,000 or something like that.
I mean, just as we move into this budget, would it consider options of, working with the YMCA as far as the time frame and how long it's open, just as far as some cost savings? Is that something that is feasible to have? Because I do think it would be really, it would be tough to see like the pool just close. So, I mean, just as a cost saving.
But remember, regardless of what hours you do, you're running those pumps 24 hours a day. There's, I think, one of you water guys could probably know, I think there's close to 700,000 gallons of water in there. So by law, you have to have, there's a ratio and a formula for turnover. I'm not a pool owner, so it's probably similar to private pools. But you have to have, so you're not going to really save anything on electricity. You won't save, we turn it way down at night for chlorine, but you have to turn it back up before the bathers get there. So you could save some things there, but once you have it open, you probably should use it.
And you also had that grant money last year. That's something we could probably look in. The county, didn't they give us $10,000 to open it one more week at the end of the year? I mean, that's something that's also an option as well.
But like I said, I was kind of against that simply because it was at the end of the year. I think attendance that week, what was it, 100 people at the most?
It doesn't. If we get $10,000, that could be the first week of the year. I mean, it is what it is. The first month.
To your point, I think $8,600 went to the Y.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
We probably lost money on the chlorine, for that extra week. But hey, we gave it a try. So does anyone have any other questions on that? This is new for the city, this enterprise fund for recreation. This is 11%. You're talking really this just a few more cuts. And remember, there's a couple positions I purposely don't have people in, just for some of the unrest that's going on right now. But with that being said, I've never been through a budget that looks the same now as it does by the time it's approved in June. So we'll see what really impacts here. Similar, really similar. It's not my job, it's not Public Works' job to decide on a final budget. It's our job to recommend what we think we need to operate the department and cover the services that everyone depends on. So with that being said, I have a job to do, everyone has a job to do. When the dust settles, you can count on Public Works to get the job done. All I can ask is and this is just me, maybe I'm saying it because this is my last budget. I've spent my entire career in Public Works. My first 10 years, I was a CSEA member. I think, and this is just specifically Public Works, not angle, but experience for me, is that Public Works, including CSEA, the folks who work in there, we've taken a hit a lot over the years. And they continually step up and ante up and get the job done. We're at a point in Public Works, though, where once we start missing a few faces here and there, and I'm going to go over it. I know it's been a long night, but I think this is important. This next, what I'm going to show you, which is our challenge. Once again, this is general fund. We balance the solid waste fund on their rates, the enterprise fund for recreation on that. So we just can't go much more, if any more, with some cuts. And just to that point, so every morning when I show up down there and I sit with Brian, sit with Justin, sit with Rich,
basically we have 34 people. So that's not very many people. That's not including the people getting it done down at the landfill and the transfer station. So out of that, so on a typical day like today, it's not snowing. We all know what we do when we're snowing. There's 3 people dedicated to the codes cleanup people, all right? There's, 4 down at Casey and Falcon. There's 1 out at the cemetery. We talked about that. There's 1 at Hoops. We didn't talk about that tonight. There's 4, myself, my position, foreman's position, Sarah and Kim. There's 4 there. There's 2 out mowing every day. There's 3 people usually on blacktop every day. There's 3 mechanics in there. Buildings, there's 4.5 people doing here, there, and everywhere. You can bet there's going to be at least 2 people on average out for any reason, a sick day, vacation time, and remember, this is summertime. So, and we have 2 people every day out in the parks cleaning up, and I'll tell you, we created that groundskeeper job, and John McCarthy's been in that job since we started it, and nothing but efficiency and just incredible work for really not having much to go on. So out of that, there's 30 people left, or that's 30 people. So we have 4 people left. So now you throw a brush crew out there, you need 3 or 4 people, or a tree crew, you need probably 4 or 5 people. Sometimes we have nobody sitting at the table. And that's good. We don't have any extra. That's good. I'll be the first to say, over the 26 years I've been here, some positions should have disappeared. The technology's changed a little bit, and the roles just didn't match with today's world, but we're not at that point anymore. You know, I don't know what else to say, but it is what it is. We'll have a job to do, and I know, Brian, you'll continually have expectations for our department. These people get it done every day, and it might be time for some other departments to start anteing up, and I'll end my thing. So, does anyone have any questions about Public Works? So, thanks very much.
Thank you. Other business from the council? Councilor Diego?
Yeah, just real quick, had a recommendation that was given to me earlier today. Thought it was a really good idea. Maybe holding maybe actually something like a citywide employee meeting. If we had a venue big enough, we could toss ideas around. Everybody's got to work together, like Tom Gayback said earlier. The unions need to get together. At the point right now, it's unfortunately everybody's cutting everybody else's throat to save their own departments. I understand the department heads covering for their people, they should, but this has got to be a team effort from everybody in the city. That's an idea that we could come up with and take ideas from the employees. Everybody has a different take on what should be changed, what should be cut, what we can and can't do. Definitely open to listening to whatever their ideas are to help us, close the gap here, which would be all right. Obviously, they're out filling potholes and stuff now a little bit. That's good to see. I want to thank the assessor's office. I think today was the last day of the assessment review. That's a tough job for anybody. You're never going to make anybody happy in that job, unfortunately, so they've had their hands full for several months. Thank them for what they've done. We'll be reaching out to Brian and Mike to actually secure a contract tomorrow for this softball. We got somebody that's willing to do it. They're going to put a contract together. I'll run it past them again, but this is, unless something just absolutely goes crazy in the next 24 hours, this softball will be starting in about 3 weeks in the city. They'll be covering, obviously, the cost of everything. One little odd thing that I wanted to speak on real quick, and Jenny said earlier, that Burgess Street project, I don't see, is Seth here tonight? No. I know we went back and forth on it twice. My very first meeting was the first vote when they authorized another $59,000 for that project. They wanted to go 6 days a week, 12-hour days, said it was going to pay for the inspector. I personally voted against it because I said the weather wasn't going to get any better, but I felt that they asked for $59,000 under the pretentious that they could go ahead and handle it, even if the weather was bad. That's why I voted no. I said the weather wasn't going to get better, and why do we have to give you more money to finish it? I see the job's getting ready to start again on the 20th. Is that something maybe Mr. Garland can speak on? I personally, I don't care if we're under budget or any of that. Doesn't matter at this point. The contract's the contract. Obviously, it's way past when it was supposed to be due. I don't think we should be authorizing any more money for them to do the project that obviously should have been done. I said at the first meeting I was here, I'll say it again, they bid the project. It started basically in the winter. It didn't happen. 2 weeks after we authorized $59,000 more, they pulled out and said, we'll see you in the spring, which happens to be coming to fruition next week. I don't know if that's something that can change, Nate, after it's already been voted on, but they're not, even the schedule is now it's going to be 7 to 5 Monday through Friday, so I don't see the need to pay an inspector any extra money at this point. If they did what they requested, like I said, I'm against it anyways, but if they did and this thing was done in December, January, February, whenever they said it was going to be done, we're not even talking about it, but this is a completely different scenario at this point.
Councilor Diego, contractually, our hands are largely tied. And there are performance bonds and things of that nature that can be looked at. Generally, that's the superintendent of engineering and the city manager that ride herd on those sorts of things and have that level of, and comptroller who have a level of knowledge on operational things that I really can't speak into, but on a legal level, we're bound by the contract, which generally speaking, these sorts of contracts are industry-wide forgiving enough for instances like this. But we will take, I'm sure city manager will direct the superintendent of engineering to take a look at what can be done under the contract. Generally speaking, we would engage in some, or take on some legal risk if we stood up now and tried to speak into something that's already been contractually agreed to.
Right, yeah, I guess the only issue I have with it is this was a change order onto the contract under the assumption that they were going to finish the job basically ASAP. That's what they asked the extra money for. That's why I keep going back to the same thing. I said, you can't get the job done now because of the weather, you're saying, but if I give you another $59,000, you're going to get the job done, and then they didn't. I guess that's the sticking point for me.
My department and the engineering department will look into what can be done relative to full performance and our performance expectations.
I appreciate it. The last thing I just wanted to speak
just
on.
really
Sorry,
quick. The consultant doing that work would not be paid unless they did the work.
Right, and they're not scheduled now, so they're going back to the
so like Nate said, we'll take a look at that contract.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Probably the last thing, just kind of off the subject. There's a lot of talk from people working. They're all working for the city, unfortunately. This is a tough budget for everybody. Everybody's sitting here, all the department heads. It's kind of disappointing that when people start using the word incompetent and telling people they don't know how to do their job, my answer always is, well, if you can do it better, then maybe you should step up and try to do it or apply yourself for that job. But we're not going to get anywhere if we have our own people talking about our own people. And, like I said, nobody wants to be in this position. People are upset on, the possible ramifications of this budget, but that's something. Go ahead and look at yourself in the mirror before you start talking about somebody else. And know the facts also. I mean, I don't put a lot of heat into what a lot of people say when they start talking about, and it's not about us. Everybody here should turn our pay in from the city council. I mean, if you want my $160.29 a week I'm getting paid, I'll give it to you today. Go ahead and work 35, 40 hours on this budget every week like I do for $4 an hour is about what I'm getting paid. It's not about the money, but know what you're talking about before you just continually spout off at the mouth about things, and quit talking about the department heads. Some are different than others, but do the right thing, and let's at least try to keep this together instead of causing a bigger division in the whole city. Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you, Counselor.
I do. I have a request, and it's probably for Jenny. I have some follow-up questions for Chief Androsco, and they were about 3. And as I'm re-reviewing the budget, it's going to be more than 3. So I didn't know if it made sense for me to send them to you, or to ask, set up a meeting with him, or to ask those questions in the open forum. Because I imagine people would want to hear them. It's going to be information that I would then need to come back and share with council anyway. So what is
That's up to you. If you want to ask them now, we can get the information together, meet with you, and then report back out, or we can set a meeting and provide the information
Typically,
to the
how
council
I
as
would
well.
handle it, if you don't mind.
No, please, tell
I
me.
would email the manager and the chief, so the chief can actually have answers, and then explain that you want to talk about it publicly, but that'll give him a chance to prepare. That's what I would do.
No, and thank you, Mayor. I'm definitely going to take that advice. I will put them together, and then I would like that, if he is available, on the first meeting in May. Is that too late?
That would be May 7th.
May 7th? Is that?
So that's the day that the council input is due to us on the budget.
We don't have
the way
for
that
5 weeks this
the
month.
way that this year's budget process is going to work is there's probably going to be quite a bit of dialogue during the 3 meetings in May. So that would be an appropriate night, in my opinion. We have a break with the 5th Thursday this month. I think there's going to be some work the staff will be doing on the budget during those couple of weeks. But it's going to really be up the nights that we have reserved for council input. The first week, city manager getting back the next week, and then final council input the 3rd week. Those 3 meetings in May before the public hearing will really be a lot of back and forth. So that goes for any department head or any topic as we finish up next week. Trying to get those questions in through email if you need more information before that kind of 2-week hiatus, with us not being here the 5th Thursday of April. Be good timing to get it to them before kind of the end of next week, so that they can work those couple of weeks when there's a slight break in the action. So we're ready for those discussions in May.
Okay, so I'll put them in writing, and then May 7th would be a good date?
Yes.
To have them, okay. And Mr. Garland, I will put you in that email too, and if I'm allowed to, because I do have some questions connected to liability, that's connected to some of the threats that have been going on, and I would like those questions answered.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'll be brief. I know everybody's tired. I do want to piggyback on something that Mr. Talbot said. I do want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. As I said last week, we still, so far, operate in a representative democracy, and this is part of the process. And it's important for people to understand what's going on and take part in that process. I've said week after week after week, and I'll be brief in this, you learn real quick in local government, in elected office, that you don't get anything done without the workforce. People have your number, they have your email address, they call you, but nothing gets done without the workforce. I've worked with 7 city councilors and 1 other mayor, and no matter who the councilors were, what political party they were, they've all respected the workforce, and I believe have shown that. That will continue. This is a tough budget year. Obviously, it's a tough process for everybody. A couple comments were made tonight that I want to address directly. There was some critique of the actual budget process, and I think an understanding on that individual's part that this was done to pit departments against departments, and nothing could be further from the truth, and I wish that person was still here. I can call him and explain that to him, but I want the public to know that. This is my 3rd budget as mayor, and in the first year we had 2 new city councilors, and I asked then City Manager Jeff Diger to institute this process, because the budget process should be about what the departments do. because the people who rely on those services need to know unequivocally the services that every department provides to them and what they're paying for. We did it last year, and we did it again this year. We have a new city councilor. It helps the councilors understand. That was not the intention of this. You know, my dad had a saying, "You're damned if you do, damned if you don't." And I guess this is one of those situations. There was a comment made about union endorsement. That happens from time to time when you're running for public office. I've met with all the unions, I think, at some point along the way. And sometimes I've asked for their endorsements, sometimes I haven't. In this case, I didn't even ask for the endorsement. They offered it to me. But I told them what I've told every union I've ever met with. I'll promise you one thing. I'll always treat you with respect. I've done it since day one. I'm in year 11. I'm still doing it now, and I will do it till the end of this term. So I just wanted to be on record for that there's no favors that are exchanged here because a union endorses you. It's because you have the same mindset, that you value the workforce, and you express that to the workforce. And then they make a choice. And I'll just end with this. A comment was made. It can be interpreted many different ways. I interpret it one way. I don't know if that person meant it that way. But I'm just going to close with this. We've got hard work to do. We've got decisions to make. We can't do this with cuts alone. We can't do this with a tax increase alone. We have to work in conjunction with our department heads to figure out the best path forward. I received my car insurance and homeowners insurance renewal this month. $400 increase. No tickets, no accidents, no claims. If we were to pass a 28% tax increase in this budget, the average assessed house in this city would receive a $900 a year tax increase. That's my house, right? And I'm just using this as an example because it doesn't affect me like it affects other people, right? Those two bills alone would be $1,300 more a year. So that's a little over $100 a month less in disposable income. For me, that just means that I'm not out spending money in the local economy, which is problematic enough. But for people who are on a fixed income, that's devastating to them. So we've got to balance the two, and that I promise you with my entire soul, that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to balance the two. And we will get there. We have no choice. And we will do it with the most respectful means possible. And with that, I understand we have an executive session request tonight.
Yes, Mayor. 3 items: sale or lease of real property, pending litigation, and the financial history of a particular corporation.
Do we have a sponsor for executive session? Councilor Cuddy, second by Councilor Diego. Please call the roll.
Executive session 8:34. Councilor Diego.
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy.
Yes.
Councilor Clarko.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye, we'll be in recess for executive session.
Hey, Joe, how's it going? Good to see you.